Well, the time has finally come. Donald Trump was just interviewed by Joe Rogan for 3 freaking hours.
Did you just assume because people loved you on The Apprentice, they were going to love you as a president?
I figured it would be so easy.
You said a lot of wild shit.
Can you imagine Kamala doing this show? I hope she does, because it would be a mess. She'd be laying on the floor comatose.
Can you guys hear that?
He looks comfortable. He looks confident. I thought there would be some awkwardness at the beginning, but very little, if any at all.
You know what? Without speaking to you, I think I know you maybe almost as well as your wife. They're stupid people, but they're vicious people. She's a stupid son of a bitch. I'm getting myself in trouble with some of these things, but I don't really care.
You haven't even got to the election. There's been 2 assassination attempts. The rebels are Republicans now.
I could have put crooked Hillary in jail.
There's an app that you can get, that will show you where the human feces has been documented in San Francisco. It's a poo app.
There's no reason not to think that Mars and all these planets don't have life, because
Mars, we've had probes there and rovers.
So Joe opens up with the talking point we've heard him talk about before, about how the show The View used to talk so lovingly about him. I mean, they were in love with him.
When you're on The View, you got introduced to Donald Trump.
Please welcome my friend, Donald Trump. We're so happy to have you. Whenever you're on with us, we're very happy.
Whoopi Goldberg gives you a big hug and a kiss. Joy Behar gives you a big hug. Barbara Walters gives you a big hug. They all loved you.
Whoopi loved
you. Gives you a hug and a kiss.
It was a different life, because you're right. The View. I was on The View many, many times, and they loved me. I was very popular. Barbara, you know what? Look,
it's real.
It's really mine. You know.
We've gone through a few things together over the years.
She is very sexy, I want to tell you.
He knows how to get to me. Listen, Donald, so far, there's nothing you haven't been successful at. You're a great character. You're a great friend of ours. We don't know whether you should be president, but we do know that you will enjoy watching.
But you do admit I'd be a great president. Some of these women, they're so stupid. And Joy, she would, every time she'd see me, I'd be in the theater or something, and she'd, you have to be on the show again. Come on, let's go.
She loved you.
She loved me.
There's probably no one in history that I've ever seen that's been attacked the way you've been attacked, and the way they've done it, so coordinated and systematically. When you see those same people in the past, very favorable to you, like Oprah, when you were on Oprah's show,
very.
She was encouraging you.
If I were a Democrat,
you'd get a lot of positive press.
I would get a lot of positive press.
No, it's a creepy, corrupt business.
Then Joe asks another question that's been on his mind for a while, which is, what is it really like when you step into the office of president?
What was it like when you actually got in? Because nobody really can prepare you for that. When you're running for president, you don't really know what it's going to be like when you actually get into office.
Well, first of all, it was very surreal.
I would imagine.
It's very interesting. When I got shot, it wasn't surreal.
Trump begins to answer, but then he does his first weave of the day.
You know what the weave is? I'll talk about like 9 different things, and they all come back brilliantly together. What you do is you get off a subject to mention another little tidbit, then you get back onto the subject, and you go through this, and you do it for 2 hours, and you don't even mispronounce one word.
You win.
Yeah.
You get inaugurated. Holy shit, I'm the president.
Yeah, that's what happened. So I'm driving down Pennsylvania Avenue. I just built a building on Pennsylvania, the hotel, and we sold it to the Waldorf Astoria.
Everyone's aware of all this stuff. What I want to get to is, like, what was the experience once you got inside?
And I said to the guys, I want to see the Lincoln bedroom. I had never seen the Lincoln bedroom. I'd heard about the Lincoln bedroom.
What did you think it was going to be like? Versus, like, did you have any ideas of what it was going to be like, and what was different?
I had 2 things that I really focused on: governing the country and survival. So here I am standing there, and again, I had never really done this before. I ran a number of months before. It was a very surreal experience, okay?
Like, what's day one like?
Sitting there, I'm saying, the Lincoln bedroom. It was amazing. And the bed, he was very tall. He was 6'6". That's your kind of
Your
person.
weave is getting wide. We're getting wide with this.
The weave is very, very important. Very few weavers around. You got to weave it out.
The man loves to weave. Some of his weaves are cool, like when he talked about the history around the Lincoln's bedroom. The man is a first-class weaver, no doubt about it. But it was clearly getting to Joe at points in the conversation.
But when you do the weaves, and you have to be very smart to do weaves. When you do the weave, look at this, just in this one thing. We're talking about little pieces all over here, but it always ends up home. No, it comes back home for the right people. For the wrong people, it doesn't come back home, and they end up in the wilderness. Right?
Every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death.
Another part of the podcast that I thought was really important was when Joe got Trump to talk about his appointments during his first administration. It was one of my biggest issues with his first term.
Once you got inside, you had to appoint all these people.
Yeah.
Like, how many appointments did you have to make?
Well, you have
actually
10,000 appointments. Now they're different. You have big ones, and then they appoint 100 people and 200 people. But the president really is involved with approximately 10,000 appointments, military.
And how did you know who to appoint?
Well, I didn't. I had no experience. I had to rely on people that I respected or liked, but that I didn't know that well because I didn't know them that well. The one thing I can tell you, everybody wants the position.
Of course.
No, but sometimes I'll hear a lot of people don't want to work with Trump because Trump is tough to work with, etc. Let me tell you, everybody wants to be any one of these positions. They die for it.
Of course.
The biggest mistake I made was I picked some people. I picked some great people, but you don't think about that. I picked some people that I shouldn't have picked. I picked a few people that I shouldn't have picked. And
neocons?
Yeah, neocons or bad people or disloyal people or
people that were just
people
bad,
that were into the
people got bad advice.
Yeah, you're reading about him a little bit today. Bolton was an idiot, but he was great for me because I'd go in with a guy like a John Bolton. When they saw this whack job standing behind me, they said, "Oh man, Trump's going to go to war with us." But it's very dangerous to pick somebody outside of a politician because a politician's been basically vetted for years.
Right.
You pick a business guy and they've never been vetted at all, and they're, the head of a big company or something, but they've never been vetted. You know nothing about his personal life. You know nothing about where he's been. When you put him in, it's a little bit dangerous because all of a sudden they get checked up and you hear things that you're saying, wow, this is not going to work out too well. So it's very dangerous. Picking people that are outside of politics is somewhat dangerous.
So you're kind of stuck in a position where you have to pick established people.
This answer was really disappointing to me. Like, how are you going to drain the swamp if you keep putting the swamp in charge? Honestly, it's sounding like he's going to do the same thing he did the first time and just appoint a bunch of establishment types. Hopefully he listens to the right people around him this time. What's more dangerous here, putting corrupt people as heads of government organizations or an outsider who might have a shady past? Like, who cares? That's a weird take from Trump on this one.
And then the problem with established people is established people are already indoctrinated into the system.
And they're stiffs in many cases.
Stiffs.
They're survivors.
What do you mean by stiffs? When you say stiffs?
A stiff, they don't have nothing. They have nothing.
And so they never do anything controversial.
Well,
they never take any chances or speak their opinion. It's outside of the...
Elon Musk, yes. He endorsed me. By the way, he gave me the nicest endorsement too. The tough. He said the country's going to fail. You should do the same thing, Joe.
So Trump is trying to get Joe to announce his support here, but Joe does not bite for 1 second. I think at this point it would be very odd if Joe was not to vote for Trump. It may be that he just doesn't want to talk about it publicly, who he's voting for, that is, which is not a bad idea for people to say, hey, you know what? It's none of your business who I'm voting for.
Because you cannot be voting for Kamala. Kamala, you're not a Kamala person. I know you. I've watched you. I know him better than he is. You know what? Without speaking to you, I think I know you maybe almost as well as your wife. I have watched you for so many years. You're not a Kamala person. Can you imagine Kamala doing this show?
I could imagine her doing this show.
She'd be laying on the floor.
She was supposed to do it, and she might still do it, and I hope she does.
She's not going to.
I will talk to her like a human being. I would try to have a conversation with her. If she did this kind of an
interview with you, you'd be saying, call in the medics.
I think we'd have a fine conversation. I think I'd be able to talk to her.
Kamala goes on 60 Minutes, gave an answer that a child wouldn't give. It was so bad. And 60 Minutes took the answer out. They took the whole... and they put another answer in.
They edited it deceptively.
Which didn't make sense either, but it was better. They took it wasn't editing. It was fraud.
This was not editing.
Editing is where I'll give an answer and they'll take a couple of words and change around, or they might even take a sentence or two off, which is very bad.
You know, this would be the perfect time to introduce President Trump to the world of Pink Trip, Joe.
Do you know who Pink Trip is? Pink Trip is hilarious.
She's a stupid son of a bitch.
I wouldn't try to interview her. I just try to have a conversation with her and hopefully get to know her as a human being. That was my goal, having her on, trying to get her to express herself just as I don't think these formats are good. I don't think that two people, first of all, I hate the idea of the presidential debates because I hate the idea of a time limitation on complex ideas. Also, you have to break.
I think you have to have the debates, though.
Right, but the way they do the debates, I think, is the wrong way to do it. I think they should have a conversation. I think you and Kamala, you sit across the table with no one in the room but the two of you. No one interfering with with checking whether or not it's factual, especially when it's biased, because they checked you all those times and they didn't check her with clearly things that were inaccurate, right?
I couldn't agree more with Joe right here. The current debate formats are terrible. Just let the candidates sit down and discuss things. No moderators, no nothing, just conversation. Let it go on as long as it wants until one of them quits. It ends when one of them says, I can't do it no more. If they scream, if they yell, if they fight, if they punch each other, just let it go. And may the best man or woman win.
She's a low IQ person because she's incompetent. She's not a smart person. She can't put two sentences together. She talks. I watched her I watched her last night, too. It was the same thing. She's not a smart person. I think you should take cognitive tests. I think they say it's unconstitutional, but
That's ridiculous.
I think Kamala should have a test because there's something missing. There's something wrong with her.
So Joe says there's still hope for a Kamala episode. And I think with how well this episode is going for Trump, how well it's being received by the general public, that Kamala is just going to have to do it if she wants to compete in this election. Because if she doesn't take the chance and go on Rogan when he's willing to have her on, it's like she's not even trying at this point. But please, God, make it happen. That would be so amazing. Lord, sweet baby Jesus, please. Amen.
She stole your idea about no tax for tips.
I came up with this idea that honestly nobody ever heard of. In fact, I'm going to send her a MAGA cap.
I think overall for Trump, this was a huge win. I think this is going to get him more support. It's going to make people like him even more. He really came across relatable. There did not seem to be this artificialness that you see from most politicians in interviews. He just seemed like a normal guy.
People were tired of someone talking in this bullshit, pre-prepared politician lingo. And even if they didn't agree with you, they at least knew whoever that guy is, that's him. That's really him.
Woo! The American political system is a reality TV show designed to distract us from the fact that we don't have a choice whatsoever. And what you just watched was a major psyop. There's so many things. It's so obvious once your eyes are open. There was so much going on in this Joe Rogan episode, from how his body language was and how he was talking with Trump to the obviously scripted questions, and the guy pointed out that Trump wasn't wasn't answering Joe's questions, but like that's something you do to make it seem like it's genuine. It's like Elon Musk blowing up some rockets on the rocket. It's like no one's gonna believe him if every single rocket goes up no problem. No one's gonna believe that he's doing what he's doing. So he's got to blow some up. But anyway, so I didn't tell my intro. VGT Live is a place for discussing morality, critiquing the enemies of natural law, and supporting its proponents. Always encouraging them, our friends, and ourselves to do less harm through continued use of shadow work. Acknowledging that morality exists is like doing the first of the 12 steps in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's an arduous, unending journey of self-reflection and internal work to fix how you think and react to the world around you. Satanism is not what they taught us it is on TV. It's not just people who worship the devil or play in death metal bands. It's how most people are today, living an eternally selfish lifestyle, ignorant of the rules of natural law. This is the reason we are where we are today. An activist who doesn't practice their principles to the fullest is an activist of nothing. Strict personal adherence to and the passing along of these principles is integral to bringing back balance to our sick and immoral society. As always, this show is open and live, giving anyone the ability to come up and speak. or defend themselves. Please do not kill the messenger. Do not focus on me or anyone else on the show too much, as humans are fallible, but natural law is not. The truth is the truth, no matter who is delivering the message. A lot of things said on the show may trigger you, but don't forget, getting offended is for bitches. I'd like to get into more of this Trump stuff, but we got some more not fun stuff we need to do. I got to talk to Steve for a little bit about what the fuck happened on my show the other night, dude.
I saw that.
Hard. It's been pretty hard defending you. I've had a lot of people, show up and be like, Steve this, Steve that. And it's like, okay, well, we're all on our path to natural law, and we're all on different positions in our journey. And I know Steve spent a little bit too much time, on Reddit back in the day. And I thought that might be like weaning its way out. But the other night you said some crazy shit on my fucking podcast, dude. And like, that's not what you said is not in line with natural law. B, it seemed like you were trying to bring up the subject so you can like flex your fucking hot takes about race on my show. There's so many things wrong with what happened the other night. And it's like, you have forced me in a position where there's nothing else I can do. I can't, I gave you the benefit of the doubt, but the other night, which is the most current bit of information you have given me, was, and then the other guy on the show, you kept calling him an op. And I'm like, bro, you just said the gnarliest shit that anyone's ever said on my show, like stuff that an op would fucking say on my show. So I'm just baffled right now. And I don't really know what to do, but it doesn't seem like, like I know you're buddies with Mark, but that doesn't mean that you've done all the work, So I don't know if you stopped doing shadow work and stuff like that, but people that say those kinds of things are people that aren't doing shadow work. So I don't really know what to say. I don't know if there's really anything that can be said. But I'm just kind of, it was just the last thing I ever expected to happen on my show the other night. And, this is the only way I know I can deal with it.
I don't know. Like, I for myself, I don't really get how my perspective would reflect on your show, specifically about that. You might not be into what I'm into, but
yeah, but people don't understand that. People who are watching the show to learn about natural law or veganism or something aren't gonna be like okay with these takes you have. Regardless if it's me saying it or you, it reflects the same on me. And like, I'm trying to take natural law to like other influencers and stuff, right? And that's what I was doing the other night, talking to a guy with almost 400,000 followers on YouTube, and you say that shit to him. How the fuck am I supposed to be anyone talking about morals if I hang out with someone who says that kind of shit or who has those beliefs still? And how could you expect that to not affect Mark being so close to you, saying that shit live on an open podcast to, even though, there wasn't that many people there, half the people on the panel saw it. I got called out. You got called out very big by that YouTuber we had on here. And, there's nothing I can do at this point. I don't know what the fuck you're thinking, dude. Like, you specifically brought the subject up in like that's why I left, because I was like, oh, this conversation's going south. I'm getting out of here. Like, these clowns are gonna like do some weird, like dick measuring fucking contest with their bad rhetoric. And then I was just hoping that you would like recover and say something, not fucking stupid. And then you just like continued. And I just don't, I just don't know what to fucking say, man. Like, that was some of the dumbest shit I've heard in years. And I get it. It's like a hot take, all you Reddit guys, all the 4chaners, you guys, you know, the whole edgelord thing does not mix well with natural law. When we're trying to teach people to be moral, you can't be an edgelord at the same time, you know, and I've been having to deal with the fact that you're a fucking edgelord because people I respect are frowning upon me right now because I am still you know, giving you the benefit of the doubt. And at this point I can't anymore. And like I don't know. And like why would you want, like, I mean, whatever, you believe what you believe, but I just, you know, like, do you believe this shit still, or is this just like some shit you like arguing about, having hot takes? Like, I get the whole like Reddit thing and like wanting to have the hottest take and just like scare everyone with your opinions and shit, but like, how could you be so knowing of natural law and supposedly in line with it, but then have those takes and have those opinions in 2024? It's not 2016 anymore. It's 2024. Like, people aren't going to understand, Steve, when they watch my show and hear you say that shit, and you're the only other guy on the show every fucking week, you know? Like, so I don't know what to do, but it seems like, you know, the only option I had was to do some fucking foreshadow work, and I don't really know what to do, because this is pretty fucking serious.
Well, I mean, I'm not playing around. So
you're not what?
I'm not playing around. So I mean,
that doesn't help things. That doesn't help the situation.
Yeah, well, I mean,
you're not playing around with your beliefs about how.
Yeah, what in particular, like do you have issue with?
You dropped the N-bomb several times on my show, but not in the fun, playful way, in the actual like hard R racist way. And then you said something about like mud monkeys or something like that, and how, you know, something about all these people coming over the border, and you just dove right into all this fucking bullshit.
Was I stereotyping?
I'm completely baffled that you were okay with doing that on my show.
Was I stereotyping somebody based on their race? Or?
Yes.
Okay, who?
What?
Who?
Like, do you want to watch it again?
Sure. Yeah, I think we could.
It's not like, yeah, it was really fucking embarrassing, bro. Like, and if you can't see that that's embarrassing, then you got to check that shit out with yourself and be like, why am I okay fucking alienating myself from the world, for one, alienating myself from friends around me? Because I could see you're a fucking loyal dude, and you know, your heart seems to be in the right place. But then you do something like that, and it's like, what the fuck? You know, like, I don't get it. How you don't see that might fuck up like any good work you're doing, having these hot takes, you know, what I don't get it. Like, what is the value? I mean, it's not even about that, because this is your belief. You know, I can't tell you that your belief's I can't convince you to change your belief right now. Like, it's like, that's why it's like, I don't know what to do, but I can't have a fucking overt racist on my show. Well, and I'm sure Mark doesn't want an overt racist speaking for him, you know, like you do.
Well,
being his buddy and like reporting from his fucking, coming on the show from his studio. Like, I doubt Mark wants that.
I'm a contractor. I do work here and there, jobs, but to say I speak for Mark or Mark speaks for me, I don't really see anything like that. But
I think,
I mean, it comes to natural law, I take it quite seriously. But but that
doesn't. But what you did the other night isn't showing that you take it serious.
Well,
that's something like literally
The guy was
a
trolling.
plant does that, bro. Like a literal op who you were calling Direct D an op, but you
he
were
is an op.
behaving far more like the op. Like,
well, look, it's
YouTube, bro.
He challenged my sexuality. He's trolling me, and
bro, he was trolling you, and you fell for it.
Like, I just said he was trolling. Like, I didn't fall for it. I don't like being trolled
hitting on you. You realize that, right?
It doesn't matter.
Like, you're a cute dude and everything, but he wasn't actually hitting.
No, look, dude. I don't. I'm very serious about that, and I trolled him back, but I trolled him back. Did you see the rest of his show that he finished on his show? That he ended up having to kick me because, I mean, bottom line is and
that was the first thing you started talking about what happened on his show after, and it's like, dude, I'm talking about what happened on my show before, though. Like,
right. Well,
that's crazy shit, dude.
Well, I mean, it's crazy shit for a guy to be hitting on another guy on your podcast.
Oh, that's not why you said all that shit, though.
But it is, because he's claimed to be something that he isn't, trolling me. And what's to say I was claiming something that I wasn't really serious about, trolling him.
What?
He was trolling me, saying that he was gay.
He was messing around, trolling you, and you spilled your guts. You showed him your darkest side within 5 minutes of him trolling you.
But he was being serious. Like, he was pressing it on.
No,
and
he was not being serious.
Yes,
he was very.
He kept saying it. He kept saying it. He kept messing with, trying to misconstrue my sexuality, and I don't like that sort of thing. So I trolled him, pressed him on those things, and I did it to the end because I think he's an op. I think he's a government agent, and I think he's
he wasn't treason. The one saying crazy racist shit on my podcast, though. You were.
Yeah, but he was pulling information. That's all they do. They're
yeah, and you gave him all the information he needed to smear both of us.
Well, he could smear me, but
how am I?
You left the group. I mean, you had no idea those views. So, I mean, you took your show off, and then I finished with him on his show, where he had to kick me off.
None of this matters, dude.
Well, that's what happened. I mean, look. If you don't believe in white genocide, and people got to bring awareness to it any way they can, then I don't get what you're talking about, man.
Yeah, but that's just a cope, bro. That's not bringing awareness too. Dropping the N-bomb several times on my channel. And how is that bringing awareness to anyone?
Other people have dropped the N-bomb on your channel before.
Yes, joking around.
No, there was people that you let in that were saying the N-word continuously.
Yeah, and guess what? That guy said the N-word in order to get my show taken down. That's the only other time the N-word has been dropped on my show. I didn't let him do that.
I think they were trying to take your show down. I think
you know who you're talking to. You aren't talking to some dumb person right now, dude. Like,
I think they were just trying to express their free speech. I don't think they were trying to get you taken down or anything.
See, I would advocate for people to be able to be stupid and say racist things, but I don't think Jeff should allow it on his fucking show. You being racist.
He wasn't joking around, John Bob. He was serious.
He wasn't. He was. The thing is I watched it, and as I was watching it, it's not like he was just coming out being like, "Oh, well, la-di-da-di-da-di-da." He was triggered because of how he was baited, and it was flying out. It was literally just flying out, and I agree with Jeff on this one, man. I really like you. I appreciate you. I do respect you. We talk a lot.
My goal was to get him to kick me off. I accomplished that on his show, though.
No, Steve.
Well, here's what I'm saying. People should be allowed to say
wanted him
shit
to leave.
So we could see how stupid they are. But if I were Jeff, I wouldn't tolerate that. I'd boot you right off the fucking show. There's no reason he wants to be associated with a racist. That's crazy.
Yeah, dude.
Okay, but I mean, racism.
You want to know the only time it's okay to use that word? When you're talking to a cop, because they are the most ignorant people in our society, and it is the most hateful word. You don't, and you give black cops a free pass because you don't want to sound like a bigot. Sounding like a bigot only makes you look stupid, dude. That's crazy. Why would you
Also,
want
John's kid is black. John's got a black kid, by the way.
Well, look,
Who?
I feel
John
that
Bob?
the
Yes,
same
John
thing.
Bob has a
Damn,
black
fool.
child.
He's beautiful.
I
I
feel
was
like the
He
same
is.
disappointed
Oh my
he didn't
God, he's
get the
got baby
curly
blue
hair, though.
eyes. Biddy's gorgeous.
Oh, he's gorgeous. I was disappointed he didn't get the curly hairs, though. I was really hoping he had nice curly hair like his mom. Pops out with blue eyes and straight hair. It's been getting wavier as he gets older, though, so maybe it'll change yet, you know? Besides the point, we're not talking about my kid. Like, that's fucked up, dude. That's all I have to say. That's fucked up. Shouldn't promote hate. It only makes you look stupid, dude. Why would you want to look stupid? That's crazy.
And like I said, it was clear that he was baiting you and you took the bait. So, I mean, like, I'm not going to stand here and just be like, oh, he just started pulling it out of his ass because he just wanted people to know his view on that. I mean, you for sure were on fire over the whole thing. And you were just, I don't even think you were thinking half the time of what you were saying. I mean, I understand why you want to defend yourself right now with it, but
I was thinking, that's how I talk. I don't know what you mean. The thing is I wanted him to either leave on his own accord or to kick me or somehow, on his show, and that I accomplished that at the end of it. I mean, if you watch the rest of
No, dude,
whatever
you're talking about something else.
did he put up that?
You gave him like
leave?
what worse thing could you have given him? But I'm a racist. You know,
you gave him
like,
your personal power. You did. You gave him your personal power.
yeah, you
for
gave
sure.
over everything to this guy immediately because you thought he was actually like. Were you drinking that night?
No. Look, dude, I own
drinking.
whitepilled.tv. I am racist. Like, I'm seriously pro-white.
Well, you can't be here if that's going to be your thing, bro. Like,
Well,
that's not something we promote here, and it's not in line with natural law either. So it sounds like you're just full of shit.
Yes, it is in line with natural law, and it's eugenics. It's serious eugenics, not dysgenics. Dark dysgenics, which is what is being done to my people. So, I mean, I don't know, man. And if you don't stand for your nation, if you don't stand for your people and your line, then you don't really stand for anything.
I'm glad you stopped that.
What the fuck was that?
Stop. Well,
What
dude,
was
you
that?
know where that was going. That's some fucked up shit, man.
Yeah.
Aren't we like trying to like work towards a natural law where we discuss there are no lines, there is no blur, there is no law? Like, we're trying to tell the truth here. He literally within the last 5 seconds explained how he believes in nation separation, divide, and it's like, whoa.
No.
And also, I mean, we can be proud about whatever anything we are, any individual is. There's one thing with being proud and another thing with being hateful. It doesn't even have to go hand in hand.
If he's proud of that, why doesn't he just fuck a white girl and fucking have white babies?
Exactly.
If he wants to promote certain traits, bring those traits out. Like me, I don't think fucking. I hate to say it, but I think you're a beta male if you're like, only white girls. I'm gonna avoid 99.9% of the beautiful women on the planet, and You know what I mean? Like, how are you gonna turn down a beautiful girl and claim you're a dominant male? These
John
motherfuckers
has no
are
lines. No lines for
What?
John. He wants to tap the whole gene pool.
Well, dude, look what fucking Genghis Khan did. That guy's a fucking legend. See, I'm not gonna be out there and be like,
Well,
I mean,
I'm so dead by that right now.
easy there,
you
John
have a
Bob.
trait I don't like. Sorry, what were you guys saying? I was talking too loud. I missed you. What you said.
That's probably in the top 5 comments I've heard you make, John. Jesus Christ. Guy's a legend!
Am I fucking wrong though? Fucking A, what kind of weak beta motherfucker? You have a fucking smoking hot woman in front of you, fucking throwing herself at you, and you're like, you got the wrong skin color. Fucking,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Your hair is curly. Are you fucking kidding me? Fucking weak, dude.
Yeah, John
These
don't care.
motherfuckers are weak. Well, why should I care? I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get some fucking tea. I started my fast
That's
at
it,
5.
peak male.
Who's in on this fast with us, guys? We're gonna starve ourselves and make ourselves
Tuesday.
strong.
Distilled water. Yum yum.
Fucking right.
Way to go.
I started at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
I like starting my fast later because then like you have to get through 3 days, okay? So if I
Yeah.
start at 5 o'clock, I ate for the day. So I'm halfway through the day when I wake up, you know. So I'll go
At
until
5
at least
p.m.
What?
You started at
Yeah.
5 p.m. Oh, okay.
I only started an hour or two ago. But
Oh,
then I'm already fed for the day. I'm going to be able to sleep through the night. There's a hormone that makes you hungry. So you got to get through the first 36 hours. So if you got a 12-hour boost on it, fucking, you know, with sleeping and, you know, having eaten for the day,
Right.
it makes it a lot easier, honestly, at least in my opinion.
Right. Well, yeah, the hunger pangs kicked in. I was like, oh, let's see if water will quell it. It's an interesting experience.
Oh yeah, just keep drinking. Just keep drinking.
That's what I
It takes about 15 minutes to beat any craving. It doesn't matter how strong they are, they will subside within about 15 minutes. I'm not saying it's not going to kick in at 5 minutes after that 15 minutes, but just you got to beat it each time. And that's why I kind of start like halfway through the day because then I can sleep through the first 12 hours of the fast, you know.
Right.
What's your 3 days in though? That hormone that makes you hungry, it's fucking gone. So, you know, like your body stops producing it. So then it's just free sailing. So you'll
Amazing.
have fun with this. It'll be easy.
Scott started today as well, as we saw. So far there's 3 of us.
I start Tuesday.
So race lever, all words should be fair game.
Cool,
I
Christian.
agree, but that doesn't mean we have to associate with these people. I am a huge proponent in free speech. I think people should be able to make stupid racist comments. Doesn't mean we have to deal with them, dude.
No, yeah, I'm completely okay with hate speech as long as that hate speech isn't used to, you know, cause coercion, you know. But yeah, I'm not. That's not a message I'm trying to promote.
Yeah, why?
Yeah.
It muddies the waters of the message.
Yeah.
And people don't look at it. They don't listen to you.
And so, you know, this, you know, we're all trying to spread the message by reaching out to bigger people, and I'm doing big outreach right now, and fucking you know, this guy's talking about racist shit on my show with you know
what yeah.
What is that, an abacus?
Nope.
Oh no, it's a
foot massager.
cool calculator thing.
No, it's a foot massager. My grandpa had one when I was a kid, and I saw this thing in what was it? That coat place, the coat factory. It was like $12. I was like, my grandpa had one of those, so I had to get it.
I remember seeing him grow up.
So fun.
Growing up, I remember seeing those and just like, being like, what kind of game is this? So I found a cool video.
What'd you find?
It's becoming more and more common today to see restaurants offering significant vegetarian and vegan options. As a non-meat diet is increasing in popularity,
Ooh,
products and
good.
alternatives that fit this lifestyle have naturally evolved too. But this is nothing new. In fact, people have been
Sorry, I forgot you're
vegetarian for
fasting.
thousands of years and in different cultures and parts of the world. Famously, in India, many of the religious traditions even encourage a vegetarian diet. But what about further west, in places like Europe and regions dominated by the Hellenic and Roman cultures? In fact, vegetarianism was quite common in this culture too, and it was often associated with significant religious and philosophical communities and traditions like Pythagoreanism, as well as being in conversation with other topics like animal sacrifice and animal rights, perhaps even. So today I thought we'd explore this topic a bit deeper by looking at how the ancients tackled this question of vegetarianism, the morality and ethics around it, as well as animal sacrifice and animal rights more generally, particularly by looking at the writings of one very fascinating philosopher. The Hellenic world was, of course, varied, spanning different continents and many different cultures that mingled with the original Hellenic one, so to say. To say anything generalizing about such a vast topic is therefore pretty difficult. Even when it comes to religion, we can't really say that there was a Hellenic religion, at least in the sense that we understand religion today. But most of us, of course, know about the Greek Olympian pantheon of gods and the cults associated with them. This was indeed a staple of this culture, and the relationship between the gods and people was an important aspect of life. And when it comes to the religious cult and its rituals, there's no doubt that for most of history, animal sacrifice played a very central role. We find very clear evidence of this as early as in the epic poems of Homer. We see in the Iliad and the Odyssey how people will sacrifice oxen to Zeus and to other gods before going on a journey, all these kinds of things. Animal sacrifices all over these old texts, as well as in many other sources describing how people would sacrifice different animals as offerings to the gods. During the big religious festivals, an important ritual was precisely the sacrificial offering. The inedible parts of the sacrificed animal would be offered to the gods, and the edible parts would be cooked and shared by the community as a meal. Now, in a culture where animal sacrifice was this important for the religious rituals and cults, we might not expect vegetarianism to be that common. But in fact, this is not necessarily true. Vegetarianism and a vegetarian lifestyle, so to say, was something that was associated and was an important aspect of certain communities and traditions. Perhaps most famously and significantly, some of the so-called mystery cults, and even more famously among those, the so-called Pythagoreans. Pythagoras is in fact a significant part of this story. While it is uncertain exactly when, or even if, he lived, it is believed that he was active between the 6th to 5th centuries BC. After settling in the Italian city of Croton, he gathered a group of followers, what became known as the Pythagoreans, that shared secret esoteric teachings and became known especially for a certain lifestyle, a, quote, Pythagorean way of life that involved, among other things, a vegetarian diet. As the centuries went on and the original Pythagoreans ceased to exist as a coherent group, their cultural memories still remained. Pythagoras became seen in some ways as the first philosopher and as one of the originating figures of an esoteric philosophical lineage, a lineage that was claimed especially by Plato and the Platonists. It is significant to note that a lot of what we associate with Pythagoreanism is probably a kind of Platonism that was projected back onto Pythagoras and his original community. But regardless, in later antiquity, there seems to have been a resurgence of this school in the form often known as Neo-Pythagoreanism, especially by the first couple of centuries AD. And aside from speculation about numbers and mathematics and how the world is all mathematics, this Pythagoreanism was especially associated, once again, with the Pythagorean way of life. To be a Pythagorean, for the most part, meant adhering to certain rules of conduct and behaviors. The Pythagorean way of life in late antiquity often involved sporting a beard, something that was pretty taboo in the Roman culture that had come to dominate at that time, which very much favored having a clean-shaven face, as well as dressing in rags and things like this. It's kind of similar to the image of modern-day hippies, is what these Pythagoreans or Neo-Pythagoreans would be associated with. And again, being a Pythagorean and adhering to this way of life also usually involved being a vegetarian. As we saw, Pythagoreanism was perhaps especially connected with Platonism, and many of these significant Platonist philosophers lived according to quote-unquote Pythagorean principles. This becomes especially clear with the emergence of what is often called Neoplatonism, or sometimes late Platonism. The foundational figure of this school, Plotinus, is probably one of the most influential philosophers in history. He lived in the 3rd century AD, was originally from Alexandria in Egypt, but spent most of his philosophical career in Rome. Here, he taught many students and composed the treatises that would eventually make up the Enneads, a masterpiece of Platonist thought. Now, we don't know that much about Plotinus's personal life, but he seems to have lived a relatively ascetic lifestyle. It's reported that he didn't eat much, and importantly for our discussion today, he followed the Pythagorean ideal of having an exclusively vegetarian diet when he did eat. To people like Plotinus and others, vegetarianism was an important part of living a philosophical life, a kind of self-negation and asceticism that helped the soul focus less on the desires of the body and more on the inner life of the soul and the intellect, which is our true and real identity. It's very hard to summarize Neoplatonism in short terms, and I advise you to check out my full introductory episode on the topic to get a better overview. But in short, it is a philosophy primarily concerned with bringing the individual soul back in line with the divine, the absolute reality, and to unite with it. Plotinus and the Neoplatonists conceive of reality through different hypostases. This can be translated as realities, and maybe levels of reality. At the core of all things is the one, tohen, the apophatic absolute from which all things emerge and sort of come from. The one then emanates or flows over in different stages, starting with the nous, which is translated with things like mind, intellect, sometimes consciousness. This is followed in emanation by the soul, and lastly, our physical universe of nature, which comes about after or from soul, the world soul. Now keep in mind that this is all an integrated whole. All of this takes place within the nous, and even within the one in a certain sense, but these are the different hypostases. The human being, or the philosopher, is then asked to turn his gaze back upward, or should I say inward, and contemplate his true noetic reality, to return back up the ladder from the material to the nous, where he becomes united or realizes his union with it, and can even become united with the one itself. And this also comes, as it often does, with a set of principles in terms of how to live and how to be in this world, which we will see in this discussion. For someone like Plotinus, this involved ideally a vegetarian lifestyle. But this abstinence of meat wasn't just for ascetic purposes. There were ethical and even metaphysical factors at play here, and this becomes especially clear in the writings of Plotinus' most famous disciple and student, Porphyry. In fact, Porphyry is so significant for this topic that most of this episode will be dedicated to exploring his ideas and writings. Porphyry was born in the city of Tyre, in what is today Lebanon, or possibly in Syria. He came from a Phoenician Semitic background. His actual birth name was Malchus, but he was eventually deeply Hellenized and took on the nickname Porphyry, which means something like one clad in purple, which is the imperial color of the Roman Empire. This is significant, right? In Greek, the name was Porphyrios. Eventually, Porphyry traveled to Rome, and there he became a student of the great Plotinus, even if his own words are to be believed, eventually becoming his kind of closest and chief student. And indeed, Porphyry is central to the surviving legacy of Plotinus and the Neoplatonist school, as he's the person who actually collected and compiled the many writings of Plotinus into the so-called Enneads that we know today. Significantly, Porphyry also wrote the life of Plotinus, a biography of his master, which he attached as a kind of prologue to the Enneads, and which still serves as our main source for information on Plotinus' life. In this work, we also get some information about Porphyry himself. For example, that he occasionally suffered from a crippling depression. In one instance, he tells his teacher, Plotinus, about his state of mind, that he's feeling depressed, he's feeling terrible, to which Plotinus says that he kind of just needs to go on a vacation. He says, you need some new scenery, go to Sicily or something. Basically, just go on a vacation, you'll feel better. It also becomes clear from his different writings that Porphyry took his asceticism very seriously. Indeed, Porphyry comes off as unusually extreme in terms of his ascetic lifestyle and ideas in his Platonist context. Sure, Platonism did teach that you should turn away from the desires of the body and focus on the intellectual, the noetic reality of our soul, but there was usually a kind of balance between this contemplation and an active participation in the world. In Porphyry, however, we find a sort of neurotic obsession with purity, where basically all forms of involvement in bodily things, from food to sex, is to be avoided as much as possible to purify the soul and the intellect from all things material, which he seems to view as impure and dirty in some way. This is not the view of Plotinus. The material world is not, this is not Gnosticism. Very importantly, Plotinus very clearly criticizes the Gnostics, among other things, for their negative view of the physical world. Plotinus sees the physical world as a beautiful reflection of the noetic world and the forms, the Platonic forms, right? Even though it is sort of on a lower level than the noetic reality, the physical world still has a sort of nobility to it. Porphyry, I think, would agree with Plotinus, but from his writings, he seems to be a lot more sort of obsessed with impurity, that all these bodily needs and bodily desires and things that we experience, sensory pleasure, sensory experience, that this is somehow impure and dirty to Porphyry, right? He seems to want to avoid these things to an extreme degree, even more so, again, than Plotinus, at least as much as I interpret Plotinus. There could be different reasons for this extreme asceticism in Porphyry. One could be precisely the fact that he obviously suffered from things like depression and might have generally suffered from mental health problems. Was he just, for example, a more emotionally sensitive person, having a hard time controlling his desires and emotions, thereby forcing him to be more strict about his renunciate lifestyle, to stay away from everything that he considered impure and that affected him so much? And this could be one reason. Another explanation might be the increasing popularity and spread of Christianity at this time, which obviously had a much more extreme ascetic and world-renouncing character. Porphyry might have adapted a more strict asceticism in order to sort of compete with Christianity in a way. In any case, Porphyry wrote several significant and important works of philosophy himself, some of which have survived to us today. Speaking of Christianity, one of his most famous works is a direct critique of this new religion called Against the Christians. This is one of the most significant and scathing attacks on Christianity from antiquity and remains a really fascinating read even today, even though it only exists in fragments. There are many other works of his as well, but for our discussion today, there's one single text that is especially relevant, namely the treatise on abstinence from eating animals, known in Latin as the Abstinentia in its shorter form. This text, in the form of a letter to his philosopher friend Firmus Castricius, is essentially dedicated to arguing for why one should be a vegetarian, as well as why animal sacrifice is morally and metaphysically wrong. In terms of historical arguments against meat consumption and violence against animals, this work is one of the most significant ever written. And while a lot of it is, of course, of its time, so to say, some of its key arguments are still relevant and used by people today. As I mentioned, the work is in the form of a letter to a friend and fellow philosopher, Castricius, who, for whatever reason, seems to have gone back to eating meat after being a vegetarian for a long time. In 4 books or sections, the end of the last one being lost, sadly, Porphyry presents several arguments in favor of eating meat and animal sacrifice from several different schools, including the Stoics and the Epicureans. And then he presents counter-arguments and refutations, often through quoting other earlier philosophers too. The arguments can essentially be divided into what I'm going to be calling ethical, ascetic, and metaphysical ones, although they often also overlap. Book 1 is primarily dedicated to presenting the arguments for meat consumption, which will then be refuted. But he also discusses the ascetic or philosophical reasons in favor of a vegetarian diet. According to his Neoplatonic worldview, the true home of the human being lies in the immaterial noetic world, in the nous, or the intellect, the mind. While they reject a radically negative view of the physical world, such as that of the Gnostics, it's still considered to be at the bottom of the chain of existence, being the furthest away, so to say, from the nous and the one, the divine world, sometimes even called God. In one sense, there is no place that is away from the divine, because everything takes place within the nous, and we are right there right now, but we are misled by the physical world and the human body, which pulls us downward into the material, into confusion and duality. The true Platonist who has chosen a life dedicated to philosophy, and remember, philosophy at this time was not just speculation about arguments about reality and the world. Philosophy was a whole way of life that included practices and ways of living and eating, and so the borders between things like philosophy and religion basically non-existent, right? So the dedicated philosopher, he renounces as much as he can the bodily desires and pleasures of this world, especially in the more extremely ascetic perspective of Porphyry. With this in mind, eating meat was seen as a kind of luxury, especially at this time, and thus to abstain from meat was an important part of the abstinent philosophic life that Porphyry asks us to live. If we want to become united with the divine and our true self, we can't participate too much in the life of the body. Porphyry says, "For the return is to one's real self, nothing else, and the joining is with one's real self, nothing else. And one's real self is the intellect, so the end is to live in accordance with the intellect. Our goal is to become like God, who is transcendent of the physical. So we're to emulate that by turning away from the material and contemplating our true inner reality. And this includes abstaining from meat, which is not only hard on digestion and increases our animalistic nature, according to Porphyry, but also for ethical reasons that we will explore soon." He says, "If we are to speak frankly, concealing nothing, there is no other way to achieve our end than by being riveted, so to speak, to the God, and unfastening the rivet of the body and the pleasurable emotions of the soul which comes from the body. Security comes to us by actions, not just by listening to lectures. It is not possible to be familiar with a God, not even with one of the particular gods, a God who is singly above all and higher than incorporeal nature, by following just any lifestyle, especially flesh-eating. One can hardly, even with all kinds of purifications of soul and body, become worthy of awareness of the God that is if one has a fine nature and lives a pure and holy life. Porphyry makes it clear, thus, that when he urges his readers to abstain from meat, he is talking specifically to people who have chosen the life of the philosopher, one who wishes to return back to his true divine self. As for people like athletes or heavy laborers, who at least at this time certainly needed meat in order to perform well, things are very different. Now, despite this particular point, which is very important for his perspective and for the better sort of overview of what he's saying here, a lot of the arguments that he does give is still very much relevant. And to a modern reader, it is probably especially his ethical arguments that resonate the most, because it speaks about the actual rights of the animals themselves, right? It talks about whether it's morally right to hurt and eat animals on the basis of their sort of self-worth, in a sense. It is especially Book 3 that is dedicated to this argument, and essentially asks the question whether justice should be extended to non-human animals, and thus if it is justified to kill them and to consume them. At the core of the debate is the issue of rationality. Are animals rational creatures? In other words, do they have logos? Many, including the Stoics, would say that they are not rational, thus fundamentally unlike human beings, and thus not deserving of justice in the same way. Animals, according to this logic, can thus be used freely for the benefit of human beings. We can sort of use them for labor, for consumption, whatever, because they're not rational animals, so they don't deserve justice in the same way that we would extend justice to other fellow human beings. But Porphyry disagrees, instead arguing that animals definitely have rational souls, albeit not as rational as human beings. He says, animals are taught some things by each other, and others, as we have said, by people. Animals have memory, which is of prime importance in the acquisition of reasoning and wisdom. There are also vices and grudges in animals, even if they are not so overflowing as in humans. Who does not know that animals that live in groups observe justice toward each other? Every ant does, every bee, and so do creatures like them. Who has not heard of the marital chastity shown by female ringdoves who, if they have been seduced, kill the adulterer if they catch him? Who has not heard of the justice which storks show to their parents? He goes through many arguments and examples, including how animals are praised by the gods and the ancient peoples, and thus reaches the conclusion that they are indeed rational and, for that reason, worthy of justice. He says, these arguments show that animals are rational. In most of them, logos is imperfect, but it is certainly not wholly lacking. So if, as our opponents say, justice applies to rational beings, why should not justice for us also apply to animals? This is a profound argument, especially from the time and place where it was written, as it basically points to the feeling and well-being of the animals as an argument against hurting them. A point that hits home the strongest, as he says, it is the nature of animals to have perceptions, to feel distress, to be afraid, to be hurt, and therefore to be injured. There's value in the feelings of the animals. Thus also making a clear distinction here between animals and, for example, plants. He says, plants have no perceptions, so nothing is alien or bad to them. Nothing is harm or injustice. For perception is the origin of all appropriation and alienation. The only time when killing animals is justified, he says, is in self-defense. This is essentially the same argument that many vegetarian and vegan representatives will make even today, and it's really fascinating to see it argued in a text from the 3rd century. But all this also has metaphysical implications. If you remember his argument from before, that if you want to become closer to God, you have to become like God, which involves being uninvolved as much as possible with material things. And this leads him very conveniently to the discussion about animal sacrifice. This is the main topic in Book 2. He says, but people might still be puzzled why we count abstinence as holiness, although we slaughter sheep and cattle in sacrifice and reckon this rite to be holy and pleasing to the gods. So, because the resolution of these questions requires a long discussion, the matter of sacrifice requires a fresh start. Now, as we said before, and as Porphyry alludes to himself here, animal sacrifice was a central and very important part of the religious cult in the ancient Hellenic world. It was a key aspect of how good relations were upheld between the gods and humans. So how can abstaining from eating and even killing and hurting animals at all be a sign of holiness? Well, surprisingly, Porphyry argues that animal sacrifice is not only morally wrong, but even useless in a metaphysical sense. And this discussion takes us into central debates and features of Neoplatonic philosophy. According to Porphyry, animal sacrifice is actually a kind of perversion of an older, true Hellenic religious tradition. The only reason to him that people started sacrificing animals was due to different crises, and people turned to animal sacrifice in periods of crisis to try to solve these difficulties. Indeed, animal sacrifice doesn't even make sense. In his form of Neoplatonism, the gods are immaterial. They are intellectual and super-intellectual principles and beings. They have no use or interest in material offerings, since they transcend the material entirely. It's almost offensive to Porphyry that one would offer things like flesh to God. And he includes a quite long paragraph going through the appropriate forms of sacrifice that one should direct at the different divine realities. He says, "So we too shall sacrifice, but we shall make, as is fitting, different sacrifices to different powers. To the God who rules over all, as a wise man has said, we shall offer nothing perceived by the senses, either by burning or in words. For there is nothing material which is not at once impure to the immaterial. So not even logos expressed in speech is appropriate for him, nor yet internal logos when it has been contaminated by the passion of the soul. But we shall worship him in pure silence and with pure thoughts about him. We must then be joined with and made like him, and must offer our own uplifting as a holy sacrifice to the God, for it is both our hymn and our security. This sacrifice is fulfilled in dispassion of the soul and contemplation of the God. As for his offspring, the intelligible gods, hymn singing in words should be added. For sacrifice is an offering to each God from what he has given, with which he sustains us and maintains our essence and being. So as a farmer offers corn ears and fruits, so we offer them fine thoughts about them, giving thanks for what they have given us to contemplate, and for feeding us with the true food of seeing them present with us, manifesting themselves, shining out to save us." The only being that actually wants animal sacrifice as an offering are the daimones, a lower level being existing between gods and humans, and which are morally ambivalent. It is thus quite different from the Christian concept of demons, even though etymologically it's probably the same word. It is particularly greedy and malevolent daimones that pretend to be gods and thus to receive material and fleshly offerings. This gives them power to cause more havoc in the world through sickness, famine, and much else. So by offering to these pretend gods, we are actively hurting the world and helping to spread evil in a certain sense. So no actual gods want sacrifice, wants animal offering, because it is material, it is...
We got to discuss that. Think about that. Okay, if the demons want those material gains to profit from famine and disease, the medical industries, the demons are people. They're talking about people profiting off of this. The demons are just a fable in movies. Actual demons would be actual people that own these medical industries. At least that's what I got out of that. Do you think it's that simple?
For sure. Or yeah, or anyone who promotes this type of behavior, like these carnist, carnivore influencers and shit that just make money off of telling people terrible advice for their health and their soul. For sure.
Paid by the industries,
Yeah.
So speaking of paid by the industries, I am fucking thoroughly convinced at this point. I think Padini is a fucking controlled op. He's either working for the fucking the meat industry or the police. Like, he's fucking literally opposition.
You know what I think Justin Padini.
He's been trying to get me to play video games with him for years. He's all, bro, stop making all those videos and just play video games with me. It'll be way bigger. We'll be famous. Like, if there's anyone I know, Padini's definitely like, there's something amiss there, because he's like, so it's like he's either an op or he's the biggest moron I've ever met in my life.
Thank you.
I don't think he's that dumb though. me and Christian, we go both ways.
I've heard him say some
I
shit.
think he's just stupid. He says the stupidest shit, but he keeps repeating himself as if he can't learn. John Bob is paying Dr. Demon. Oh, paging Dr. Demon.
Paging?
Oh, are you paging fucking Padini or what? You can page him. I wouldn't say anything that I wouldn't say to his face.
No, he's not gonna come in. These guys are all getting they it's not fun for him. And he forgets that it's not fun for him when he comes up here, and then he comes up here and then he's like, oh shit, I forgot.
Yeah.
We were laughing earlier during the thing because we're like, oh, well, Alicia's still here. And we're like, well, it wouldn't have been the greatest time for her to leave. After that whole Steve incident.
Wow, I'm still kind of shocked that at
No,
that show
that
happened
was
the way
wild.
it did. And then the conversation today, like here we were trying to give him a level of walkthrough to just be like, you know what, maybe I was in the wrong anything, and he doubled down.
Yeah.
What was that last comment? Padini is MPD, what, like police department?
Bro,
That's
you know what I
police
think Padini is? I think Padini is some dude who plays video games. He's a low-level fucking drug dealer who rats out bodegas. He's a fucking paid informant just so he could do his fucking thing. That's what I think. And I also think he's the biggest dumbass I've ever met in my life. You put that together, that's Padini.
Probably.
I mean, over there, like, he's a big deal. You know what I mean?
No, I can't believe he posted another plants have feelings post today. Like I it's just like, oh my god, dude.
I thought I broke that out of him. I literally was like, cool, I'm glad we're past this. Because I literally bombed every time he said that. But no, sure shit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty wild.
Well, he doesn't really have a choice if you think about it. I mean, how is he going to come up with a new argument against veganism when we fucking debunked them all? That's his fucking hill. He's going to die on it, yo.
He is dying on that hill.
He's been
Larkin Rose.
Yeah, him and his beta male master.
How did Larkin Rose get so famous? I remember asking John that, like a year ago when you told me everything about the book and stuff. I was like, wait, what? You're like, yeah, dude, like he's kind of blowing up this and that. I was like, but he's a fucking moron. Are you serious?
No. He's just consistent. Basics, really. Yeah.
God, he bit my bait all the time. Larkin Rose did. I mean, didn't he, John? Every time I'd throw stupid shit at him, he was just right there, and try to fucking defend the stupid shit he was saying.
I wouldn't say it was that many times. He's a fucking beta that blocked you right away. He likes to hide the anarchist behind an echo.
Oh, he blocked you guys?
Oh, yeah.
He's blocked 5 of my accounts.
I didn't know that. That's hilarious. I mean, it's not surprising. It's just funny.
And dude, I talk shit to everybody, man. Like, even if like I think you're cool, like, cause like good example, Durian Rider, I watch all of his videos. Still talk shit to him.
Yeah.
Oh, we know.
Fuck with him.
I see you in the comments of his videos. I'm all, hey, there's Christian.
You know it.
You guys.
Oh, we got oh my god.
Guys, I love dogs,
Christian.
but fucking get out of my face.
Yes.
Harley.
You guys want to say hi? Yeah. I'll everybody can say hi to you. Here, I'll show you.
Christian.
Okay. Yeah. I got this little bit.
Have you seen the video of the guy reacting to Natasha's OnlyFans?
Speeder's the pumpkin.
Oh my god, no. What?
It's the funniest thing you've ever seen in your life. It's the funniest thing you've ever seen in your life.
Isaac Butterfield.
Isaac Butterfield is the guy's name. I can't believe you haven't seen it.
No, but the name is like slightly ringing a bell. So I gotta see that.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, Durian Riders like talked about him a lot. He's kind of a fool, but like I forget what the context was exactly. But yeah, it was just it was a funny one. We'll have to send it to you.
Yeah. So, Alicia, what's been going on with the Sotos?
Well, bizarrely, after they posted that video of the flower and being all zen, and then I looked at the creator, which we discussed last week, saying it's a globalist. They made some comment, and then they left the group.
Oh, wow.
They left on their own accord because I checked if they were booted, and I was told no. So they left the group on their own accord.
Well, we did just do 3 videos on him.
Yeah.
And they were posting very how would I say it? The content they were posting was pretty embarrassing. Like they were saying. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean the
but that's like Jeff
homesteading
Berwick
stuff
crowd. All those guys want to make millions and drive Lambos, and it's like, bro, that's not.
I would be embarrassed if I was them.
Yeah.
I was
Or
just
maybe
explaining
like
this to
one of
John.
because we don't know who was who, like who was posting. So maybe it was like one of them posted, and then the other spouse, like, ooh, what if they got into a fight about it?
Well, no, I
Who
if
knows?
I would not be stoked about
But-
hearing that some show is talking about me week after week, me and my wife, and like totally shitting on them. Like I'd be like, fuck, you know, dude. Yeah, everyone's this scene's so small.
Yeah, true.
It's
well,
I don't
And
understand.
there's plenty of these dudes that are watching every one of these shows.
They're
Oh,
taking
yeah,
it
well,
by force. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say the crazy thing is all these people who think like this is like their big line up and they want to make millions. I was just telling, was it today, John? I broke world wealth down to John, and John was so like mind blown. He was like, "Wait, what were those numbers?" It's like, John, less than 0.6% of the world's population have over $1 million in the world. People really need to grasp that reality. Over 42% have less than $10,000 a year in the world. Like it's not what people think, you know, and everybody's so manipulated by this, but they're just making other people money.
Yeah, there's piling up shit around them.
Yeah.
The only people that get rich do it off the fucking hard work of others. Like I really like it's fucking insane. How do these fucking contractors that hire subcontractors to do the work, and they're getting fucking rich? They're not even doing the fucking work, and they're taking half the money from the job. Fucking worthless motherfuckers.
Yeah, I would definitely think if I was some couple that was talking shit to a bunch of people, I would definitely think that was an escalation, and you know, we should probably calm down on things, you know, because that's, you know, these names may be up here forever. That's the thing with the show. Like, dude, even if Will Keller came up here and we talked it out, I'd take some of that shit down, you know, like, but it's like, you know, like, bro, you're not even gonna come up here. You're not even gonna be like, you know, maybe we start off on the wrong foot. Like, it's so easy to start the conversation, and I'm not like an unreasonable person. It's just the fact that they're blocking us and they don't have the balls to actually have the conversation. It's so like, I don't know how these guys expect anyone to respect that. And they're just hiding and trying to make money. We've been seeing week after week, Ostara Hydrogen therapy videos. Finally, those two bought one. Finally, they have one in their presence, a hydrogen machine.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that.
They're already trying to sell people.
By the way, I owe you a fucking I told you so, motherfucker. I've been saying it for weeks. You keep throwing out Passio like he's a fucking god, and I keep saying, dude, the people we hang out with are better people than him. Fucking see, he hangs out with fucking racists, man. You're like, fuck you. I'm gonna distance myself from that. You're a better person than that. I've been saying it. And you just keep giving fucking Passio shout outs when he fucking, you know, he literally endorses animal abuse, says, oh, it took me 12 years, so if it takes you 12 years, no big deal. Just go slit animal throats and be a piece of shit. Take all the time you need. Fuck that.
I mean, it's true, but, you know, we can't all be as militant as we are, I guess.
No, I get why you use Mark.
No, I mean,
he's a good key point.
All these guys that get big are surrounded by weirdos very quickly, and
I agree.
I can tell by how loyal Steve was, you know, like, and Steve lives in the same city as him, you know, like I could see why it's like, okay, you know, like this guy's always around, you know, like whatever, but I don't know. Obviously it needs to be addressed because the dude's not, you know, the dude's not right in the head.
Not in the right path.
Not in the right path. And I wanted to correct what he said. He was saying, I mean, he said that it was in line with natural law to be racist, which is complete bullshit. He used the excuse that the white genocide or like eugenics was happening. So he's taking the fact that Mark has talked about epi-eugenics or whatever as an excuse to say, oh, natural law is racist, which is complete fucking bullshit. It allows the state for racism. This is the stuff that he was talking shit about that other guy about, the guy he's been calling out, who James True. Like, it's right up the alley of that shit. Like, so you know, this guy's I don't know. And you know, and you know, it was hard, you know, because the second he showed up on the show, people that I respect started hitting me up and being like, that dude's pretty like screwed in the head, but he's so loyal and like he was very motivated, and you know, had good points most of the time, but he was hiding that from me, you know. And I don't know what he was on the other night, but it seemed like he was drunk or something, and just said the dumbest shit. And it's like, okay, well, later, dude.
And has doubled
down on it, you know. So it's like, not that
if you
even
guys
if
haven't
he
seen it, go watch it. It was something to watch. At first, it started out with a little back and forth, and I mean, I at first I was like, oh wow, and he wasn't biting at first. He didn't bite at first, and then just when he bit,
Then
it
he
wasn't even a soft
completely
bite,
bit.
dude. He just bit hard, and he
Yeah.
didn't drop it. Like I left, came back 10 minutes later, and I was like, whoa, he's like really just going still.
Yeah, I shut it off after a while. Just pulled the cord. 'Cause I was hoping he'd redeem himself, but then it just went all down the toilet.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
I'm sorry.
will say this,
I'm
though.
sure you're just as shocked as we are, Alicia. You know.
People like that
Yeah.
make the world a better place by making themselves look stupid. They set an example to others, like where the bar should be and where we want to be. You know, like we can't control everybody's speech, but I mean, I'm all for people making themselves look stupid. Like Padini, look how often he fucking argues with us, and we fucking slay him, make him look stupid. Other people are reading that; they're learning from that. We need these useful idiots. We just do.
No, I
You
know.
know?
We
Yeah,
wouldn't have
I
a
agree.
show without all these useful idiots.
Yeah.
I got them coming out of my ears, bro. I've been trying to get. I have so much stuff I need to do, but every week it's like I spend more time on. It's like I'm getting better at things, but it's harder to like stuff just piling up. Like we have so many fools, but yeah. So I don't know. This video is pretty rad. You guys should check out this guy's channel. Finish watching that video. Let's talk religion. Why didn't ancient philosophers eat meat? Pretty cool channel. But yeah, what's the guy's name? Porphyry. Pretty cool dude, sounded like. Doing what we were doing what we're doing now thousands of years ago.
That's what I'm talking about.
He sounds almost Scandinavian or such. He seems
Yeah.
No, he's really
There's
intelligent.
another guy we watch. Go ahead.
Oh no, he actually has a video where he breaks down certain things within Catholicism that people misinterpret. One of them is actually the Cain and Abel story, because everybody believes that Abel committed the first sacrifice, and at no time is there a mention of a sacrifice. Like they don't actually talk about like Abel slitting the throat of a fat lamb or anything like that. It just says basically both of them wanted to marry their sister, and God was like, "Hey, bro, like what? Y'all got to give me a gift. Better gift wins." And being that Cain was a farmer, he gave him a bunch of herbs and seeds and stuff. And God's like, "Bro, I don't really need this." And then Abel gave him the fattest lamb in the field. We were just getting this massive lamb. God's like, "All right, I'll take that." There was no comment of sacrifice. There was no conversation of any blood or anything like that. It was just kind of like, here's the gift. And I don't know, man. I mean, fat animals are kind of cool. I had a fat cat once. He was cool.
It's a pet.
Chubby.
Just hanging out with God. That's what I imagine. Like, so after I learned that story, I was to God. There are times I'll be in a goofy mood and I just think about God sitting there hanging out on his throne. He's got this big old fat lamb hanging out to him. He's named him Kevin or something.
The Lamb of God.
Yes.
I'm with you, brother.
I'm telling you.
Hey, Alicia, are you an anarchist?
I don't know. I'm just trying to, maybe in my own way, privately, more one-on-ones.
So no. So this video converted me to being an anarchist. I know Christian's not an anarchist. I don't know, John Bob, are you an anarchist?
I'm a
I want to
revolutionist.
be. I fight for the freedom, absolutely. But there's no way to actually be an anarchist with fucking slaves.
Correct.
Denying that would be stupidity.
True. But let's watch this video for a little bit. This is one of my like top 5 videos.
I support getting there. You know what I mean? Like I support getting to anarchism. I know where we're at right now. Is kind of
this video will answer a lot of questions that you probably have about how we would pull it off. This was a lecture, or was it Mises or Rothbard? One of those guys, but it's one of my favorite videos.
I mean, like it's like a peaceful resolution on how to make anarchism happen.
Not quite. It's more like what an anarchist society would look like and how much better it would look than how things are now. And kind of like more like the nuts and bolts about how we would pull it off. It's from the 80s, and I've revised it to like 2023 by adding like cryptocurrency to the mix of this, because cryptocurrency answers a lot of the questions that were unanswered with this one. But let's just watch it for a while.
Yes, sir.
1. Private law. Without question, the legal system is the one facet of society that supposedly requires state provision. Even such champions of laissez-faire as Milton Friedman and Ludwig von Mises believed a government must exist to protect private property and define the rules of the game. However, their arguments focused on the necessity of law itself. They simply assumed that the market is incapable of defining and protecting property rights. They were wrong. In this essay, I argue that the elimination of the state will not lead to lawless chaos. Voluntary institutions will emerge to effectively and peacefully resolve the disputes arising in everyday life. Not only will market law be more efficient, it will also be more equitable than the government alternative. Just as right-wing hacks embrace the Orwellian notion that war is peace, left-wing egalitarians believe that slavery is freedom. The hawks wage endless war to end war, while the Social Democrats engaged in massive theft, or taxation as they call it, to eliminate crime. It is high time to abandon such monstrous paradoxes. It took no king to produce language, money, or science, and it takes no government to produce a just legal system. 1. Contract. First, we must abandon the idea of a mythical law of the land. There doesn't need to be a single set of laws binding everyone. In any event, such a system never existed. The laws in each of the 50 states are different, and the difference in legal systems between countries is even more pronounced. Yet we go about our daily lives and even visit and do business with foreign nations without too much trouble. All actions in a purely free society would be subject to contract. For example, it is currently a crime to steal because the legislature says so. A prospective employer knows that if I steal from his firm, he can notify the government and it will punish me. But in a stateless society, there wouldn't be a legislated body of laws, nor would there be government, courts, or police. Nonetheless, employers would still like some protection from theft by their employees. So, before hiring an applicant, the employer would make him sign a document that had clauses to the effect of, I promise not to steal from the Acme firm. If I get caught stealing, as established by Arbitration Agency X, then I agree to pay whatever restitution that Agency X deems appropriate. We immediately see two things in this contract. First, it is completely voluntary. Any laws binding the employee have been acknowledged by him beforehand. Second, the existence of Arbitration Agency X ensures fairness and objectivity in any disputes. To see this, suppose that it didn't. Suppose that a big firm bribed the arbitrators at Agency X so that lazy workers, who were going to be fired anyway, were, falsely, charged by the employers with embezzlement, while Agency X always ruled guilty. With this scheme, the big firm could bilk thousands of dollars from its bad employees before terminating them. And since the hapless employees had agreed beforehand to abide by the arbitration outcome, they could do nothing about it. But, upon consideration, it's easy to see that such behavior would be foolish. Just because an arbitration agency ruled a certain way wouldn't make everyone agree with it, just as people complain about outrageous court rulings by government judges. The press would pick up on the unfair rulings, and people would lose faith in the objectivity of Agency X's decisions. Potential employees would think twice before working for the big firm, as long as it required in its work contracts that people submitted to the suspect Agency X. Other firms would patronize different, more reputable arbitration agencies, and workers would flock to them. Soon enough, the corrupt big firm and arbitration agency X would suffer huge financial penalties for their behavior. Under market anarchy, all aspects of social intercourse would be regulated by voluntary contracts. Specialized firms would probably provide standardized forms so that new contracts wouldn't have to be drawn up every time people did business. For example, if a customer bought something on installment, the store would probably have him sign a form that said something to the effect, "I agree to the provisions of the 2002 edition Standard Deferred Payment Procedures as published by the Ace legal firm." Expertise. Under this system, legal experts would draft the laws of the land, not corrupt and inept politicians, and these experts would be chosen in open competition with all rivals. Right now, one can buy definitive-style manuals for writing term papers or dictionaries of the English language. The government doesn't need to establish the experts in these fields. It would be the same way with private legal contracts. Everybody knows the rules of grammar, just like everybody would know what's legal and what isn't. Murder. Of course, one of the most basic stipulations in any contractual relationship, whether entering a mall or living in a neighborhood co-op, would be strong prohibitions on murder. In other words, all contracts of this type would have a clause saying, "If I am found guilty of murder, I agree to pay $Y million to the estate of the deceased." Naturally, no one would sign such a contract unless he was sure that the trial procedures used to determine his guilt or innocence had a strong presumption of innocence. Nobody would want to be found guilty of a murder he didn't commit. But on the other hand, the procedures would have to be designed so that there was still a good chance that guilty people would actually be convicted, since people don't want to shop in malls where murder goes unpunished. And because all contracts of this sort, except possibly in very eccentric areas frequented by people who liked to live dangerously, would contain such clauses, one could say that murder is illegal in the whole anarchist society, even though the evidentiary rules and penalties might differ from area to area. But this is no different from our current system, and no one doubts that murder is illegal in the current United States. Profitability the standard. The beauty of this system is that the competing desires of everyone are taken into account. The market solves this problem every day in reference to other goods and services. For example, it would be very convenient for customers if a deli were open 24 hours a day, but on the other hand, such long shifts would be very tedious for its workers. So the market system of profit and loss determines the correct hours of operation. In the same way, we saw above how evidentiary rules would be determined under a system of private law. Because people would be submitting themselves contractually to the rulings of a certain arbitration agency, the agency would need a reputation for objectivity and fairness to defendants. But on the other hand, the owners of stores, firms, rental cars, etc., would want some means of restitution in the event of theft, and so the arbitration agencies couldn't be too lenient. As with the hours of a store's operation, so too would the legal procedures be decided by the profit and loss test. Maybe there would be juries, maybe there wouldn't. We can't predict this beforehand, just as we can't say a priori how many tricycles should be made this year. We let the market take care of it automatically. 2. Insurance.
Since this was written in the 80s, pre-internet and pre-crypto, pre-AI, these arbitration units, we can't really predict what the market is going to bring in the future. That's kind of like government has us all monopolized, basically. There's no competition. So there's no incentive for these companies to get better, to give a better product for a lower dollar amount. So in a free market where they have like like there's 10 ketchup companies, you know, the best quality product for the lowest amount of dollar is going to be voted on by the people in the community with their dollar. So we can't really say it's like you can't say what's exactly it's gonna look like in the future, but you could kind of put together a map of what it may look like
and since this was written a while ago, they didn't know about the internet and crypto blockchain technology. Blockchain is decentralized blockchain technology would be the perfect thing to arbitrate the legal problems that happen in the future. But we'll keep going.
The contractual system described above seems to work well, except for one nagging.
Ethereum, the cryptocurrency Ethereum, is smart contracts. It's electronic contracts that will happen on the blockchain no matter what. If I decided to make a smart contract in Ethereum with my son to pay him a certain amount of money if he gets certain grades on a certain date, I can make that happen on the blockchain, and it's going to happen no matter what, and no human will have to no human will be involved with that transaction. No matter what, that crypto is going to look at what my son's grades are on the internet and pay him accordingly, or send me that crypto back. Smart contracts are kind of the best thing about cryptocurrency. They aren't really understood yet, but Ethereum, and there's newer smart contracts that are getting bigger. I rarely talk about crypto on the show, which is really weird. But ETH is smart contracts, and if Robert Murphy knew about Ethereum back in the day when he wrote this lecture, he'd be able to work it in, and it would answer a lot of these questions of who's going to do the adjudicating that this 80s era lecture made.
Problem. How can people afford to pay these outrageous fines? Granted, someone might sign a piece of paper pledging restitution to his employer if he is caught stealing. But suppose he steals anyway, and is found guilty by the arbitration agency but has no money. Then what? Well, how does our present system of auto damages work? Right now, if I sideswipe someone, I must pay a stiff penalty, or rather, my insurance company does. It would be the same way with all torts and crimes under the system I've described. An insurance company would act as a guarantor or co-signer of a client's contracts with various firms, just as a bank uses experts to...
Insurance companies and insurance has been vilified and stigmatized by the government because insurance companies are the closest thing to government, or they are, they're adjudicators, and they could work without the government. So while we do have insurance in our society, it's very looked down upon when it is actually because it's been forced on us with like car insurance and stuff like that. It's only we only have insurance for things we don't really want insurance for. But you can use insurance in different ways, which he's going to explain.
Take depositors' money and efficiently allocate it to borrowers, so too would the experts at the insurance company determine the risk of a certain client, i.e. the likelihood he or she would violate contracts by stealing or killing, and charge an appropriate premium. Thus, other firms wouldn't have to keep tabs on all of their customers and employees. The firm's only responsibility would be to make sure everyone they dealt with carried a policy with a reputable insurance agency. Under this system, the victims of a crime are always paid, immediately. Contrast this to the government system, where victims usually get nothing except the satisfaction of seeing the criminal placed behind bars. There would also be incentives for people to behave responsibly. Just as reckless drivers pay higher premiums for car insurance, so too would repeat offenders be charged higher premiums for their contract insurance. First, keep in mind that wherever someone is standing in a purely libertarian society, he would be on somebody's property. This is the way in which force could be brought to bear on criminals without violating their natural rights. For example, the contract of a movie theatre would have a clause to the effect, if I am judged guilty of a crime by a reputable arbitration agency, perhaps listed in an appendix, I release the theatre owner from any liability should armed men come to remove me from his property. So we see that it is not a contradiction to use force to capture fugitives in a completely voluntary society. All such uses would have been authorized by the recipients themselves beforehand. But where would these ne'er-do-wells be taken once they were brought into custody? Specialized firms would develop, offering high security.
So like in our society now, they drag us to court. We don't get taught anything. They bombard us with laws and policies, and then if we break one of these laws and policies, they pull us into court and they speculate over whether we knew what we were doing or not, whether we knew what we were doing or what not was wrong or right. And we have these huge courts and lawyers and this whole legal system involved in this system for something that we could do differently and just not have so many laws, for one, so we could actually know what all the laws are and contractually bind ourselves to these laws beforehand, before we enter a community. A community could require us to get insurance that says, look, you can't kill people, you can't drive 90 miles an hour on our streets. There's going to be rules in the future if we didn't have a government. Everyone thinks it's just going to be the Wild West, but no, communities will spring up and rules will be in place. But companies, businesses will pick up the trash and deliver the mail and stuff like that, where, shareholders want to make money. Corporations are frowned upon. Another thing frowned upon in our society, because they're mostly used to do bad things, but you could use corporations to do very good things too. And you can actually, in the right system where there's not a government and monopolies, the greedy shareholders that want to make all the money, you actually use their greed against them to make the best product for the lowest amount of money. And when they're competing against other companies in a free market, product is going to go get better. Where when we have government involved and there's monopolies, the product goes down. The product just gets worse and worse because they're trying to stretch this product over millions of people instead of letting people choose between several companies, who offer that product, and pick which one they think is best and vote with their dollar to for that company. Because a lot of the argument is, oh, what if this ketchup company kills someone? Government wasn't there to stop them. And it's like, no, well, if you're dumb, you'd keep buying that ketchup company. But if that ketchup company kills someone, you'd stop eating it probably, right? Thus, not buying it anymore. Thus, that company loses their business because no one wants to eat poisonous ketchup. So the shareholders that run these businesses, who are greedy, who want to make money, they're not going to let that happen. We all think government's holding everything together these days, but they really aren't. They, look at the TSA. They made things worse. They've never stopped any terrorists. Not that they really exist, but yeah, insurance and corporations, if used in the right way, capitalism brought people out of the caves, but it's been used to do bad things and it's been used to do good things. And we just need to start doing, if government disappeared tomorrow, and we were smart, we would do things this way.
Security analogues to the current jailhouse. However, the jails in market anarchy would compete with each other to attract criminals. Consider, no insurance company would vouch for a serial killer if he applied for a job at the local library, but they would deal with him if he agreed to live in a secure building under close scrutiny. The insurance company would make sure that the jail that held him was well run. After all, if the person escaped and killed again, the insurance company would be held liable, since it pledges to make good on any damages its clients commit. On the other hand, there would be no undue cruelty for the prisoners in such a system. Although they would have no chance of escape, unlike government prisons, they wouldn't be beaten by sadistic guards. If they were, they'd simply switch to a different jail, just as travellers can switch hotels if they view the staff as discourteous. Again, the insurance company which vouches for a violent person doesn't care which jail its client chooses, so long as its inspectors have determined that the jail will not let its client escape into the general population. 4. Doubts. Although superficially coherent and workable, the proposed system of market law will certainly engender scepticism. In the interest of brevity, I will deal with some common and valid concerns. What about someone who has no insurance? If an individual didn't carry insurance, other people would have no guaranteed recourse should the individual damage or steal their property. Such an individual would therefore be viewed with suspicion, and people would be reluctant to deal with him except for single transactions involving small sums. He would probably be unable to get a full-time job, a bank loan, or a credit card. Many residential and commercial areas would probably require that all visitors carried valid policies before allowing them to even enter. So we see that those without insurance would have their options, including their freedom of movement, greatly restricted. At the same time, the premiums for basic contract insurance, at least for people without a criminal history, would be quite low. So there wouldn't be very many people walking around without this type of insurance. It's true, some people would still commit crimes and would have no insurance company to pay damages, but such cases are going to occur under any legal system. Furthermore, once someone without insurance had committed a serious crime, he would still be chased by detectives just as he would be under the government system. And if these, far more efficient, private detectives found him at any time on a normal piece of property, they would have the full right to arrest him. Warring agencies. Critics often dismiss private law by alleging that disputes between enforcement agencies would lead to combat, even though this happens between governments all the time. In truth, the incentives for peaceful resolution of disputes would be far greater in market anarchy than the present system. Combat is very expensive, and private companies take much better care of their assets than government officials take of their subjects' lives and property. In any event, those engaging in warfare in a free society would be treated as any other murderers. Unlike government soldiers, private mercenaries would receive no special privileges to engage in condoned violence. Those agencies interpreting the law would not be the same as the firms enforcing it. There is no intrinsic reason to worry about battles between private enforcement agencies any more than battles between the government, army, and navy. Won't the mafia take over? It is paradoxical that the fear of rule by organized crime families causes people to support the state, which is the most organized and criminal association in human history. Even if it were true that under market anarchy people had to pay protection money and occasionally get whacked, this would be a drop in the bucket compared to the taxation and wartime deaths caused by governments. But even this concedes too much, for the mob derives its strength from government, not the free market. All of the businesses traditionally associated with organized crime, gambling, prostitution, loan sharking, drug dealing, are prohibited or heavily regulated by the state. In market anarchy, true professionals would drive out such unscrupulous competitors. Your insurance companies would become the state. On the contrary, the private companies providing legal services would have far less power under market anarchy than the government currently possesses. Most obvious, there would be no power to tax or to monopolize service. If a particular insurance company were reluctant to pay legitimate claims, this would quickly become known, and people would take this into account when dealing with clients of this disreputable firm. The fear that, under market anarchy, private individuals would replace politicians overlooks the true causes of state mischief. Unlike feudal monarchs, democratic rulers don't actually own the resources, including human, that they control. Furthermore, the duration of their rule, and hence control of these resources, is very uncertain. For these reasons, politicians and other government employees do not exercise much care in maintaining the market value of the property in their jurisdiction.
Gross
Shareholders of
rate.
a private company, however, have every interest in choosing personnel and policies to maximize the profitability of the firm. All the horrors of the state, onerous taxation, police brutality, total war, are not only monstrous, but they're also grossly inefficient. It would never be profitable for anarchist insurance and legal firms to mimic the policies set by governments. Children. The question of children is one of the most difficult. As a first pass, let us note that, obviously, concerned parents would only patronize those schools and live in those apartments or housing complexes where the protection of their children was of paramount importance to the staff. Beyond this, the basic prohibitions on parental child abuse and neglect could be stipulated in the marriage contract. In addition to whatever romance may be entailed, a marriage is ultimately a partnership between two people, and prudent couples will officially spell out this arrangement with all of its benefits and obligations. For example, before abandoning her career to raise a man's children, a woman may require a financial pledge in the case of divorce, i.e. dissolving the partnership. In the same way, a standard clause in marriage contracts could define and specify penalties for the improper treatment of children. Another point to consider is the enhanced role of adoption in a free society. Much as it shocks modern sensibilities, there would be a fully functioning baby market in which parental privileges were sold to the highest bidder. Although seemingly crass, such a market would surely reduce child abuse. After all, abusive or negligent parents are probably the ones most likely to offer their children for adoption, when loving couples are allowed to pay them handsomely for it. The controversial issue of abortion, just as other conflicts in a private law system, would be handled by competing firms setting policies to best match the desires of their customers. Those people sufficiently horrified by the practice could establish a gated community in which all residents agreed to refrain from abortion and to report anyone caught performing one. Title registry. In market anarchy, who would define property rights? If someone hands over the money to purchase a house, what guarantees does he have? This is a complex issue, and I won't be able to give specifics, since the actual market solution would depend on the circumstances of the case and would draw on the legal expertise, far greater than mine, of the entire community. I can, however, offer some general remarks. Whatever, if any, the abstract or metaphysical nature of property law, the purpose of public titles is quite utilitarian. They are necessary to allow individuals to effectively plan and coordinate their interactions with each other. Specialized firms, perhaps distinct from arbitration agencies, would keep records on the property titles, either for a specific area or a group of individuals. Title registry would probably be accomplished through a complex hierarchical web of such firms. The fear of rogue agencies unilaterally declaring themselves owner of everything is completely unfounded. In market anarchy, the companies publicizing property rights would not be the same as the companies enforcing those rights. More important, competition between firms would provide true checks and balances. If one firm began flouting the community norms established and codified on the market, it would go out of business, just as surely as a manufacturer of dictionaries would go broke if its books contained improper definitions. Infinite regress. A sophisticated critic may charge that my proposal rests upon a circular argument. How can people use contracts to define property rights when a system of property rights is necessary to determine which contracts are valid? After all, Smith can't sell Jones a car for a certain sum of money unless it is established beforehand that Smith is the just owner of the car, and Jones the owner of the sum of money. To see the solution, we must break the problem into two parts. First, we should ask, could the free market provide a foundation for social...
This is another place where cryptocurrency would come in value. NFTs with car titles and property titles, titles for anything. NFTs are one of a kind, can only be verified by the blockchain. So even NFTs today would do very well as titles if we didn't have government. And so who knows in 15, 20 years what those NFTs will be doing. They'll likely will have taken over for the DMV. Like if you have a program that can do everything the DMV can without any errors or failures, that's completely encrypted on the blockchain, that'll just do what it's supposed to do no matter what. Like once enough people see the value in that, hopefully these, DMV, these archaic governments, archaic government garbage services that were offered under the monopoly of government, which is DMV and stuff like that, which is, we all know, is like 70s technology, 60s, 70s technology that they're still forcing on us because it's more important to be for fighting wars overseas than it is to, make our lives easier when they're already, they've already set up the system to leave us in pure desperation. But yeah, so cryptocurrency, again, the blockchain, not so much cryptocurrency, but the blockchain technology in general is the answer to a lot of these questions that are asked here about who, who's going to do it. We have far more updated technology that can do these things that they could only hypothesize in the 80s about.
Interaction. I believe the previous sections have demonstrated this. That is, I have shown above that if we had a system of property titles recognized by competing firms, then a contractual system governing the exchange of those titles would form a stable basis for private law. Now, it is an entirely different question to ask, how are these titles initially defined and allocated? This is a broad topic and will be addressed in the next section, but to deal with the issue as it relates to the alleged infinite regress, let us consider contract law. Contract law is a specific branch of law, much as tort law or constitutional law. It is used, for example, to determine whether a contract between two parties is legally binding. Now, surely contract law can't be established in an anarchist system of contractual law, for wouldn't this beg the question? No. The contractual pledges made by individuals would contain provisions for all of the contingencies handled by today's contract law. For example, the insurance company backing up a customer would be promising, "We will make good on any debts that our client fails to pay, so long as the obligations have been spelled out in a valid contract, according to the terms described in the standard contract law pamphlet published by the Ace legal firm." This pamphlet would perhaps require signatures in black ink, notarized oversight for large sums, and the signers to a contract were of sufficient age and sobriety, and were not under duress when the contract was made. As with all elements of private law, the precise rules governing contract interpretation would be determined by the possibly conflicting desires of everyone through the profit and loss test. Finally, keep in mind that the ultimate judge in a given case is the judge. No matter how voluminous the law books or how obvious the precedents, every case will ultimately depend on the subjective interpretation of an arbiter or judge who must deliver the ruling. We must never forget that written statutes as such are powerless.
That arbiter or judge being the blockchain now. Instead of having a brick and mortar building where you would have some guy who's really, the expert at some sort of legal stuff do it, this perfect software program that will do what it's supposed to do every time, and we'll be able to be smart enough to adjudicate a bunch of paperwork and make a decision that is within the like a higher percentage close to what is considered legal for that community than how they do things now, which is just completely a mess with the current legal system of double penalizing the victim when you're victimized by a criminal and you take them to court and you win in court and they throw that in jail, you're getting penalized again because you have to pay the taxes that pay for that person to be kept in jail. So it's pretty messed up how things are. And really the only people that make money or get any justice are the people that the lawyers and the judges and all this stuff that make tons of money off of that industry. So, having your legal system be dealt with by the community you live in, by who you pay to take care of you, instead of having all these services forced on us by a government who doesn't really care about us. When you have a personal relationship with a business, they want to keep you, trust me, and so in anarchy land, if we didn't have government and there were these corporations offering us police, fire, like all the things that the government does, it would be run by businesses that wanted to keep you keep you happy as a customer, instead of how things are now, where they don't care how happy you are. You just get what you get because they're spending the least amount of money on the most amount of people with government, where in a society where you have a choice because it's a bunch of businesses, whatever money you have, you're voting with your money on which companies or policies that you agree with the most. And that's the only real way of dealing with these kinds of things in a community. And the other thing about these communities is, unlike now, where our government now, we have no choice. We have to just pay taxes and they do whatever they want with it. The political system's complete bullshit. It's all a scam just to keep us, like I said earlier, like thinking we have a choice when we don't. So, letting the free market capitalism, which is a beautiful self-regulating thing, deal with these things versus just us getting whatever we get from government and them taking 40% of our money and dropping bombs on kids with it and paying for factory farming. In anarchy land, if you didn't like the community you were in, or if the laws started changing in a way you didn't like, you could leave and go check out one of these other communities, as long as you're a good enough person who's able to get the insurance to go into these communities. But if you have a bad reputation, you kind of have to stay out in the land where there aren't these nicer communities, and you probably want to, fix your reputation enough to be able to get into these communities, because a lot of people, like I said, they think if we got rid of government, it would just be Wild West. But really, most of these cities would just build corporations and make their own rules. And if there wasn't a federal government, there wouldn't be these monopoly gangs that happen where like the people don't have a choice and can't leave that community and go somewhere else, because no matter where you go in our country, it's all the same rules. There's no opt-out button we can hit on our, when they try and get taxes from us. We should be able to just be like, nope, I don't want any of your shit. I'll deal with everything myself. But we don't have that option. They want us in the system because they want to make money off of us for the rest of our lives. So these alternative ways of running government are very occulted information because I know it's a lot to think about at one time. You may have to watch this a couple times, but just this way would be a lot better than how things are now. Yeah.
It's Alicia. As you were speaking there, something came to mind in terms of the little communities. And as we all know, there's these 15-minute smart cities. So in a way, these are already being paved, and those could foray actually into those little micro communities.
Yeah, and it would be very easy to keep out crime because toll roads. Like if you have a private corporation who wants to make money, who wants to keep their reputation and keep these communities safe, they own these roads. They're going to be able to regulate who goes on them. If you don't have that insurance that that you need to get into the city, they're not going to let you on the roads. So thus keeping anyone out who's not supposed to be there. In Orange County, California, they have a lot of toll roads, and a lot of these communities that put toll roads in, their crime has dropped because like these dudes don't want to spend the money to get out to these communities because it's $18 every time you want to go to Trabuco Canyon in Orange County. So it's like the crackheads are like, no, I'm going to go somewhere else. I know it's not getting rid of crime. It's just shoving it off to the next neighborhood. But if the whole North America is doing that, like there just won't be a place for crime to happen. But yeah, in the future with the smart cities and smart roads and stuff like that, and with the blockchain, all this stuff is like, a lot better than us dealing with and paying for this federal government that just does whatever it wants, whatever the agenda of the politicians, whatever ties they have to government, that whatever contracts they want from the government. That's all it is. It's a big game of let's get the taxpayers' money. It's pretty wild. Yeah. What's up, vegan metalhead? You get your internet fixed?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just the weather.
Oh, yeah.
Unless used by competent and equitable individuals. Only in a competitive, voluntary system is there any hope for judicial excellence. How do we get there? The route to a free society will vary according to the history of a region, and consequently no single description will do. The path taken by North Korean market anarchists will no doubt differ from the course of similarly minded individuals in the United States. In the former, violent overthrow of unjust regimes may occur, while in the latter, a gradual and orderly erosion of the state is a wonderful possibility. The one thing all such revolutions would share is a commitment by the overwhelming majority to a total respect of property rights. All societies, no matter how despotic their rulers, must possess a basic degree of respect for property rights, even if such respect is given due to custom rather than intellectual appreciation. All people know that it is a crime to rape or murder. Even rapists and murderers know this. Such universal, intuitive notions of justice would constitute the foundation for a system of private law. This widespread agreement would allow for more specific, contractually defined rights to evolve. The process would be continuous, with one stage of codified property titles and legal rules forming the basis for the next generation of judges and scholars to systematize and extend. Regular people understand the waste and senselessness of conflict. They will go to great lengths and make great compromises to achieve consensus. For example, despite the lack of a formal government, newly arriving miners during the California gold rushes respected the claims of earlier settlers. To take a more modern example, even inner-city toughs unthinkingly obey the rules in a pickup game of basketball, despite the lack of a referee. In market anarchy, free individuals, through their patronage of competing judicial and insurance firms, would foster a humane and just legal system. Those antisocial individuals who disrupted the process by blatantly violating obvious property rights would be dealt with in the ways described earlier. Legal positivism. Some readers may wonder how I can propose a replacement for the state's justice system when I haven't first offered a rational theory of the source and nature of legitimate property rights. The answer is simple: I don't have such a theory. Nonetheless, I can still say that a market system of private law would work far more effectively than the state alternative, and that the standard objections to anarchy are unfounded.
Personally, I think land owns us. I don't think we should own land or even try to attempt to own land, because once we own land, we kind of need a state to legitimize our ownership of the land. I think you should only you should only use as much land as you can defend with your life. I don't really the whole owning land requires so much stuff, and then you got hoarders of land, and then that's where you start having problems. And it's like, dude, if you can't defend a piece, if you don't, if you're like, all right, I'm gonna build a house here, right? I'm gonna put a fence around it, and that's all I need. I got 2 acres, I can grow my garden, I got a fence, and I'm gonna defend that 2 acres with my life. That should be property. That should be the extent of property rights,
That's funny.
But then if you have an asshole who comes along and is like, I'm going to take 500 acres right next to the water in the city, right in a really ideal place, and fuck all these people. Unless that guy's willing to stand out there with a rifle and shoot at people, over maybe a guy takes a couple miles, not 500 acres, but a couple cubic miles of land, and is like, this is mine. He's gonna have to spend a lot of money to defend that land. For what purpose? Is he even really using it? So it's in that type of a system, it's going to regulate itself, because a lot of people, it would cost so much to defend this piece of land that you're not really doing anything with if you take a unnecessarily huge piece of land. So I don't really buy. I think once you start saying, oh, I own this land and my family's going to own it forever and ever and ever and ever, and then it's like, oh, well, I need government because I need to make government legitimizes my ownership and will defend me legally if someone tries to take it from me. And then you get in the status mentality of, oh, we need a government, when we don't need a government. This could all be done a much better way. The government we have now is corrupted beyond belief. The government we now have, and our currency we have, should have folded a decade ago, but it's still hanging around, and they're still squeezing every inch, every drop out of us that they can. It's pretty wild, and that's why so many people are willing to buy an RV and go live in an RV these days. It used to be, it used to be like a joke, that's what homeless people did, but now it's people of all ages, people of all money, rich people doing it now, poor people doing it now. It's just, dude, fuck this system. This is not fun. I don't want to spend the rest of my life updating my car and paying my rent. That doesn't sound fun to me. I don't need a new car. I got an old car. I don't, I don't need a giant house and all this stuff that they brainwash us into thinking is success in life.
Isn't that
But really,
weird,
you're just
Chuck?
being duped the most.
It is weird.
Isn't that
What
weird?
I was gonna say, when you said 2 acres, during harvest here, I actually measured out how much land we actually use because we live on a little bit more than a half an acre here. We're on about 3/4 of an acre is what my home is on. And when we were doing our harvesting and everything, because I said that we grow on half an acre. It's almost an acre actually, and within everything that like we actually use, because you have your materials and everything you use, we use probably 2 acres as a family of 6. So I mean that's literally really on point.
Yeah, I think I know I've seen stuff. I've seen over. I mean, I've been into like the prepping and shit since the year 1999, basically. You know, when it was the Mayan calendar was ending, and then it was 2012. No, that was the Mayan calendar, right?
That was
Yeah.
the Mayan.
So I've been through a lot of prepping ideas, and I think I've seen that a lot over the years. That they're like, you know, a family only really needs like 2 acres or an acre and a half or something like that. And like that should just be it. And if you have that acre, you have that acre and no one can take it from you, you know, like you're gonna, and if someone would have to be willing to give up their life to take it from you. So it likely won't happen, you know, like why, if you can just go get an acre somewhere else, why would you try and take someone's who's already got it, who's dug in, who's going to shoot at you, you know, like it just doesn't make sense. This whole, I'm going to make the government do everything. Like it's a mindset we need to get out of. Not relying on the cops, not relying on government, teaching our kids to be ungovernable. That's a good thing. But they need to be taught morality first. That's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, parenting's a tough job.
There
these
is
days.
widespread distrust.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it really is. I mean, I can't tell you. It's me and my wife are at war with the school system 90% of the time because law says they have to be there. And I swear, I mean, John knows what I go through. I mean, it's pretty insane half the stuff they did. Like on Thanksgiving, my son, the only vegan in class, they dressed him up in a turkey and made him walk around the hallways and gobble, gobble, gobble as the sacrifice. I'm not even kidding. That happened.
I'd be so pissed about that turkey shit. Celebrating fucking, you know, millions of
Turkey
animals.
Holocaust.
What
Turkey
the
Holocaust
fuck?
Day.
And my son didn't know. He had no idea what was going on, you know. Like here is a 6-year-old kid who's just like, "Hey, cool. They want me to be supportive, a part of like a group and stuff. This is fun." And it's like, oh,
the turkeys
my
were
God.
sitting around the fire, hanging out with everyone. It was cool. It was a party. No, the turkeys
It was totally
got
chill.
eaten.
Yeah. Oh my God, he came home and it's like, Tommy, you know what that is and how that is. He's like, well, no, there was no killing of turkeys. I'm like, no, dude, you were just a part of the ceremony. You didn't get to the sacrifice. That comes later.
That's a ritual. A blood ritual.
No, it's crazy. Yeah, but
Trust of allowing the market to determine something as crucial as, say, prohibitions on murder. But the market is just shorthand for the totality of economic interactions of freely acting individuals. To allow the market to set legal rules really means that no one uses violence to impose his own vision on anyone else. Murder isn't wrong merely because it fails the market test. Of course not. But its intrinsic immorality will find expression through market forces. We can all agree contractually to refrain from murder and to abide by the decisions made by an arbiter should we be tried for such a crime. In this way, we know we are not violating anyone's rights. Now, after we have reached such agreement and are secure in our lives, we can let the philosophers and theologians argue about why murder is wrong. Legal scholars offering a priori constructions of just law would certainly have a place in market anarchy. After all, their tracts might influence the judge's decisions. However, in this essay I focus on the market forces that will shape private law, not on the content of such law. 5. Applications. So far I've concentrated on the critical issues in a theoretical discussion of private law. Now I would like to illustrate the versatility of such a system in a wide variety of areas and contrast its performance with the monopolized government alternative. Product safety. One of the most common charges against pure laissez-faire is that a completely unregulated market would leave consumers at the mercy of ruthless businessmen. We are told that without benevolent government oversight, food would be poisonous, television sets would explode, and apartment buildings would collapse. It's true, such critics might concede, that in the long run, shady companies would eventually go out of business. But surely someone who sells a deadly hamburger should be immediately punished for this, on top of forfeiting future customers.
They're
As with
all
other
deadly.
areas of law, I believe the market would deal with these sort of cases through contractual pledges. When a consumer bought something, part of the package would be a guarantee such as, if this product causes injury as determined by a reputable arbitration agency, the customer is entitled to the standard damages. And, just as individuals would likely need to be backed by a large insurance company before anyone would do business with them, so too would businesses need to be insured against possible customer lawsuits if they wanted to attract customers. We immediately see that this system avoids the nightmare scenarios cooked up by proponents of government regulation. Let's take the case of air travel. The Federal Aviation Administration guarantees that airplanes have had proper maintenance, pilots are rested, etc. So customers don't need to worry about their planes crashing. In contrast, many people allege under a free market, customers would have to keep statistics on how many crashes each airline had, and they'd have to be experts in airline maintenance to see which companies were best. But this is nonsense. All a flyer needs to do is make sure that when he buys a plane ticket, part of what he buys is a pledge, backed by an insurance company, saying, if you are killed in a plane crash, our airline will pay your estate $Y million. Now, since the insurance companies stand to lose millions if the planes of this airline crash, it is they who will hire trained inspectors, keep meticulous maintenance logs, etc. They would say to the airlines, yes, we will underwrite your contractual pledges to customers, but only if you follow our safety procedures, allow our inspectors to look at your planes, work out an adequate pilot screening process, etc., and if we catch you violating your agreement, we will fine you accordingly. Since they are out to maximize the profits, the insurance company will gladly pay for preventative efforts if this will lead to a greater savings in expected payments of claims to those killed in a crash. This stands in sharp contrast to the present system. The FAA, too, sets up guidelines, but what are its incentives? If there is a plane crash, the FAA itself will get more funding, since everyone will say the crash shows how awful the free market in airplanes is. Bloated government agencies always mismanage their resources so that there will be too many mid-level managers and not enough inspectors. Most important, since there is no competition, there is no benchmark against which to compare the FAA's oversight. Some lowly mechanic might have a great idea to improve airline safety, but the bureaucratic FAA would take years to implement it. Professional licensing. Closely related to the area of product safety is professional licensing. Let's use the example of medicine. Without government regulation, many believe patients would be at the mercy of quacks. Ignorant consumers would go to whatever brain surgeon charged the lowest price, and would be butchered on the operating table. To prevent this, the benevolent government must establish guidelines, backed up by guns, to limit those who enter the medical profession. This, of course, is nonsense. Voluntary organizations would probably arise, allowing only qualified doctors into their ranks. Concerned consumers would then patronize only those doctors endorsed by reputable associations. Before undergoing risky procedures or ingesting prescribed drugs, patients would require contractual pledges for restitution in the event of injury. In this case, it is again the insurance companies who would make sure the doctors they were underwriting were in fact qualified. Since they'd stand to lose millions
You hear
in
that
malpractice
shit?
suits, the insurance companies would be very...
You hear that shit? Contractually signed by the doctor and the company that's selling you the pharmaceutical company, guaranteeing that you won't be hurt with a large dollar amount attached to it.
Yeah,
You mean a
direct connection from the person who's physically touching me to responsibility.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great idea.
Wouldn't that be
Yeah.
wonderful? Accountability.
Now,
outstanding.
all these guys get immunity now.
Of course they do. They're protected by Big Daddy government because they were lobbying.
Doctors kill more people than serial murders and shit. Like,
Bro, that
Sketchy.
documentary about that dude, Dr. Death, that one fucking weird dude who like went to Texas and like butchered all those
Kevorkian?
people up. No, not Kevorkian, the more recent one. The guy,
Oh.
he married a stripper, had a kid with her, and like he like had a beginning good like thing in school, and then like he went to like Texas and dude, he just started hacking people up. He was not a good surgeon, but like they protected him. They protected this dude for like 10 years as he killed multiple fucking people and just fucked people up. He
What?
made his best friend paralyzed. Yeah, there's a documentary on it on Peacock called Dr. Death.
Fuck.
It is insane. Plus, he's on. There's a Dateline episode on.
Was he on
There's a lot
coke the
on
whole
that guy.
time or something?
Yes, he was on drugs the whole time. Total drug addict,
Oh,
and
fuck, yeah.
and he was sleeping with one of his nurses, and yeah, it was crazy.
I like Dr. Kevorkian. I think
Yeah,
he
he
was
was
a good
cool.
dude.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there was a direct connection to responsibility to him, at least.
He
Yeah.
had the courage to go against the state and try and help people that were suffering. Whether we agree with it or not, at least he had the courage to do it.
What about that one black doctor out of Chicago in like God, what was it, like early 1900s? But he was like the first person to do open heart surgery. Like this dude wasn't even a certified doctor because they wouldn't certify him. He just fucking cut somebody's chest wide open to save their fucking life. Like pulled a bullet out of it and shit. And he saved them. They lived.
Good for him.
Yikes.
Good for him, right?
Very careful when setting their standards. Such a system would be far preferable to the present one. As it is, the American Medical Association is little more than a glorified union, which requires immense schooling and training to artificially restrict the number of doctors in order to drive up their salaries and healthcare costs in general. Without its monopoly, the AMA would be unable to check the growth in alternative therapies, such as herbal, that sidestep the current cozy alliance of big pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, and the government. One must also realize that the incentives of the Food and Drug Administration render it far too conservative. If people die because of a new drug that the FDA has approved, the FDA will be blamed. But if people die because the FDA has not approved a new drug, it won't be held accountable. The sickness itself will be blamed. Consequently, many potentially life-saving drugs are currently being withheld from dying patients. In a purely free market, patients would be allowed to take whatever drugs they wanted. Gun control. I realize that many libertarians find certain aspects of my system a bit unnerving. Without unconditional guarantees of abstract rights, it seems there would always be a danger of smuggling the state in through the back door. Rather than dance around such issues, I'll give the best example I can think of to demonstrate the difference between the conventional libertarian approach and my own: gun control. As we'll see, I don't think my approach is inconsistent with the libertarian creed, but I do think it will, at least initially, make many libertarians uncomfortable. The standard arguments over gun control go like this. Opponents say gun control will render people defenseless against criminals and leave citizens at the mercy of their government rulers. Only when someone has actually used his gun against innocents can the law rightfully step in. Proponents of gun control, however, argue that this position is too dogmatic. Surely some preventative measures are justified in the public interest. As with most debates held within the context of a government legal system, I think both sides have legitimate points. Certainly we cannot trust the government to protect us once it has disarmed us. But on the other hand, I feel a bit silly arguing people should be able to stockpile atomic weapons in their basement. A strict interpretation of many libertarian arguments would mean just that. Fortunately, the system of private law that I've described allows us to sidestep this apparent trade-off. Recall that the penalties for injury and murder would be established by contractual pledges underwritten by insurance companies. People allow Joe Smith onto their property because they know if he hurts someone, either he will directly pay the damages or his insurance company will. The insurance company makes its money by charging appropriate premiums, tailored to the individual client. If Joe Smith has been deemed guilty in the past of violent behavior, his insurance premiums will be accordingly higher. But there are other factors that an insurance company would take into account when setting premiums, besides past behavior. And one of these factors would undoubtedly be what sort of weapons
Night,
does the
Alicia.
client keep around the house.
See you
After
next
all,
week.
if the insurance company is going to agree to pay, say, $10 million to the estate of anyone Joe Smith kills, the company will be very interested to know whether Joe Smith keeps sawed-off shotguns, let alone atomic weapons, in his basement. Someone who keeps such weapons is much more likely to harm others as far as the insurance agency is concerned, and so his premiums will be that much higher. In fact, the risk of a client who kept nuclear or chemical, biological, etc. weapons would be so great that probably no policy would be offered. This approach is superior to the government one. Truly dangerous weapons would be restricted to individuals willing to pay the high premiums associated with their ownership. Kids couldn't buy bazookas at the local Kmart. On the other hand, there wouldn't be a slippery slope that there is now with all government gun control. We would never fear that all handguns would be banned, since the insurance companies would be out strictly to make profit, and it would be far more profitable to allow people to keep handguns and pay slightly higher premiums. As with all contracts under my system, those regulating guns would be completely voluntary, involving no violation of libertarian rights. The insurance company is not forcing people to give up their bazookas. All it is saying is this: if you want us to guarantee your contracts with others, you can't own a bazooka. The insurance companies are the just owners of their money, and it is thus perfectly within their rights to make such a request. This is far preferable to the government system, which has no accountability. If politicians ban guns and cause thousands of people to be victimized by crime, nothing happens to them. But if an insurance company makes unreasonable demands of its clients, they will switch to a different company and it will quickly go out of business. Dangerous criminals.
Voting with your
Trade-off
dollar.
between individual liberty and public safety is also exemplified in the debates over legal technicalities. Conservatives like to complain about cases where a known murderer is set free by a bleeding heart judge simply because the police coerced a confession or forgot to read the suspect's rights. Liberals, such as Alan Dershowitz, respond that although such cases are unfortunate, they are necessary to keep the police in line. As with gun control, I am sympathetic to both sides in this debate, and again, I think my system can avoid both sorts of absurdities. To see this, let's suppose that through some quirk a clearly guilty murderer has technically not violated any contractual provisions. Or suppose an arbiter who would only be hearing murder cases because of past excellence in his rulings, for some reason makes an outrageous ruling, and finds someone innocent of murder despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Because he was technically acquitted, the murderer would not have to pay damages to the estate of his victim. However, the rules governing this episode would be quickly revised to prevent its recurrence. Private companies would be under much greater pressure than monopoly governments in the face of such bad publicity. There is another difference. Under a government system, someone acquitted on a technicality gets off scot-free. But under the private law system I've described, the killer's insurance company could still increase the payments they charge. It wouldn't matter whether their clients had been actually convicted of a crime. Their only concern would be the likelihood that he would be convicted of a different crime in the future, because then they'd have to pay the damages. This analysis also resolves the issue of parole. Although most crimes would involve financial restitution rather than imprisonment, there would still be individuals who were too dangerous to be allowed loose. The insurance companies would determine this threshold. As long as a company were willing to pay for any damages a criminal might commit in the future, people would offer him work, let him rent a room, etc. Rehabilitation would thus be in the great financial interest of the companies in order to increase their pool of paying customers. On the other hand, truly dangerous individuals would not be paroled. Right now, the government has psychologists and other experts decide when sex offenders and murderers should be let back on the streets. Since they have no accountability, these ivory tower intellectuals often test out their theories on the hapless victims of recidivist criminals. 6. Conclusion. This essay has outlined the mechanics of purely voluntary market law. The main theme running throughout is that competition and accountability would force true experts to handle the important decisions that must be made in any legal system. It is a statist myth that justice must be produced by a monopoly institution of organized violence. The arguments of this essay are admittedly incomplete. Surely more thought is needed before a move to market anarchy becomes feasible. However, I ask that the reader resist the temptation to dismiss my ideas as unworkable, without first specifying in what sense the government legal system works. 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 Foolish and reckless to entrust the state with the protection of civilian lives and property. Private defense forces would enjoy a tremendous advantage, and in all but the most lopsided contests would slaughter their government adversaries. 1. Insurance. In an anarchist society committed to the sanctity of private property and contract, insurance companies would most likely oversee defense services. To see how this market would operate, an analogy would be useful. Imagine a large city located on a major fault line. Every so often, the residents endure a severe earthquake, which kills dozens of people and causes billions of dollars in property damage. To cope with the risk of such disasters, people purchase insurance for their lives and property. Policyholders pay a fixed premium, while the insurance agencies pledge to indemnify the estates of anyone who suffers bodily or financial harm during an earthquake, according to the precise terms specified in the contract. The force of competition keeps the price of such insurance reasonable. Actuaries can estimate the expected costs per period of providing certain levels of coverage, and thus calculate the minimum premiums that would allow the insurer, all things considered, to break even in the long run. If the market rates exceeded these minimum prices, new firms will have an incentive to enter the insurance market to reap the profits. Their entry would drive insurance premiums down towards the actuarially fair rates. It is crucial to realize that the behavior of the residents greatly influences the city's vulnerability to earthquakes, and thus the total bill paid out by insurance companies following each disaster. Buildings, roads, and bridges can be designed with varying degrees of structural integrity and construction costs. The better the design, the greater its expense. Through their premium structure, insurance companies provide incentives for safer designs, thus defraying their higher costs. Profit-hungry businesses will thereby produce buildings and infrastructure exhibiting the optimal combination of durability and price, without any need for government codes and inspectors. In addition to encouraging sturdier designs, insurance companies could use other means to reduce their exposure. They might employ teams of seismologists to forecast earthquakes and publicize these findings as a service to their customers. For those citizens too poor to afford housing in quake-proof buildings, the insurance companies can construct shelters and require that these policyholders evacuate their buildings and retire to the shelters in an emergency. In general, an insurance company will gladly spend funds to protect its clients and their property, so long as the expected reduction in liability claims is sufficient to justify the expenditure. Just as the free market can provide the optimal response to dangerous earthquakes, so too can it provide the best protection from foreign militaries. Like natural disasters, wars bring widespread death and destruction. In market anarchy, insurance companies would provide coverage for these losses too, and would thus have a great financial interest in deterring and repelling military attacks. 2. Financing. It is easy enough to imagine a system of private mail delivery or even highway construction. In contrast, free market defense presents a conceptual hurdle, since it is not clear what would be the voluntary analogues to government taxation and military spending. Defense from foreign aggression is a classic public good, and as such seems the perfect candidate for government provision. Without the ability to extort revenues from all citizens, how could private firms raise the funds required by modern militaries? After all, any individual citizen could refuse to buy the product, yet still enjoy the security made possible by his neighbor's contributions.
So it's
On a
an
practical
interesting.
level, hundreds of small decentralized armies would surely be wiped out by a consolidated.
It's an interesting video, but this guy is like listening to paint dry. He's so monotone. Fuck. And why is he so hung up on fucking insurance, man? Like, that's weird too. Like, anybody with common sense realizes the world's not a perfect place. It's never gonna be a perfect place. And fucking us needing insurance is fucking crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong, it should be an option. You should be able to have a business that will protect you if something goes wrong, but you shouldn't have that forced on you. Nobody's thoughts, I just interject. Nobody's thoughts, I just interject.
Attack from
There we go.
a neighboring state. The framework described in the first section avoids these apparent difficulties. In a free society, it is not the average person, but rather the insurance companies that would purchase defense services. Every dollar in damage caused by foreign aggression would be fully compensated, and thus insurers would seek to protect their customers' property as if it were their own. Because of economies of scale, coverage for large geographical regions would likely be handled through a few dominant firms, ensuring standardized pricing and a coordinated defense. It will be useful to
I
elaborate
got
on this
something fun
hypothesis.
for you guys. So, have you guys watched my Joey Schwartz debates? The carnivore. What was his name, babe?
Sorry, which carnivore?
Joey
Was
Schwartz.
that
What was his
that
name?
direct
Carnivore
guy?
Camaraderie. That kid that I debated a couple times. Who was like a big YouTuber. So check this out. So I debated this. So this dude debated like 3 vegans, right? He debated Durian Rider, which was just kind of a funny debate. And then he did 2. He did one that was like kind of casual, but like Harley definitely won the first debate, at least like sounding more like a, intelligent, mature adult. And then so Joey had him back on again and got his ass handed to him again. And then he debated a guy named Nutrivore. Do you guys know who Nutrivore is? Nutrivore is another vegan YouTuber who's like a mega nerd, super nice guy. But he's like mega nerd, like debate nerd. And he just smokes dudes like really bad. Like that you don't know what to say to the guy because he's just like too smart. So Joey tried to debate Nutrivore and got his ass handed to him bad, to where like Joey backed out of the debate, which is like, you're not supposed to back out. He backed out of all the debates with me. But you're supposed to like, he just bailed. And then he debated me. And like we first had a discussion, and you could watch that on my YouTube. That was really funny, but he didn't prepare at all, and like didn't make an opening. He didn't write an opening statement or anything, and like he kept kind of changing his beliefs as we were debating. And so like it's more of just like a discussion where I'm just like talking shit to him. And so he was really mad about that one because I made him look really silly because I busted him on a bunch of stupid points that he talks about in his videos. And then I was talking to him about, because he's trying to change that he's not carnivore anymore. And I'm like, but you're carnivore camaraderie, Joey, that's what you represent. Like, that's why I invited you to come here and debate me, because you're carnivore. Because he was like backing off the carnivore stuff. And I'm like, dude, like you're here debating all meat versus, whatever I'm eating. So this kid was eating eggs, raw milk, and innards, and that was it. And so I was like, bro, you're going to get scurvy. And like he got scurvy. And so I was just talking all this shit to him about his name and shit. And so after our debate, he changed his name from Carnivore Camaraderie back to Joey Schwartz. And then the whole carnivore community turned on him because he just got his ass handed to him by a bunch of vegans. Because you're not supposed to debate vegans because you'll always lose if you're debating the right vegan. Like most vegans can handle their shit. What was I typing in? Joey. Joey is Joey Primal. So he changed his name. And then so he was mad that his debate with me didn't go very well. And so I challenged him to a structured debate with on a debate channel with like a moderator. And so we show up to that one, and then he just completely doesn't debate, and he was just pissing the debate moderator off. And so the guy just pulled the debate down because Joey was just being crazy instead of debating. But anyway, Joey Schwartz channel dead.
Shut him the fuck down, huh? Good.
Yeah, shut down.
Fuck him.
No more content. All his content is taken down.
Dude, didn't he have 400,000 followers? I thought he was
womp womp womp. What's that?
How many followers did he have?
Well, when he debated me, he had 28,000.
Okay.
And then after he debated me, look how much he has now. What does it say now? 18K. So he lost almost 10,000 followers after debating, going through those debates, because he was just embarrassing himself, and like everybody, like that guy Bart K did a video about him, and then just like the whole carnivore community turned on him, and now he's given up his whole channel and took all his content down. Just the most the dumbest, literally, I can't even believe I was a part of this happening. Like the dumbest content, he is 19, just lying through his teeth in every single video. And I'm so glad we did a bunch of reactions. We have a bunch of reactions to his shit in my YouTube, and that stuff doesn't even exist anymore. Like, it's literally the dumbest, carnest bullshit you've ever heard in your life. I told the guy he was gonna get scurvy, and he got scurvy, and he did this video where he was just bleeding from his mouth because he was sick with scurvy, because he doesn't, and then he started eating oranges after that, and it's just like, dude, but he's like this nerd kid who could like throw a bunch of big words together and sound smart. And so it's pretty funny if you watch all those videos of the Joey Schwartz getting his ass handed to him by a bunch of adults who actually know what they're talking about instead of just making shit up. It was funny. Like after that, he like went to Mexico and tried to do like the Lambo bro thing. Like, look at me, I'm fucking rich and I'm young. Like, I'll sell you a story about how you could do the same thing. Like, he's just like what Will Keller and Logan Hart are doing right now, basically just selling bullshit, which is just like scumbag behavior. It's something you do once you've lost control of your crowd, or once your crowd has lost interest in you, you just try and sell them shit. Hopefully some of these people, I don't have any good content to show these people, so I'm just going to try and sell them shit. Like, it's such scummy behavior. But yeah, Nutrivore is not vegan, but he wins vegan debates. It doesn't really matter that he's not vegan in the least bit. He's telling the truth. Whether he eats dairy or not doesn't matter. He's honest about the truth about veganism, and is a very large asset to us. Just like, unfortunately, Vegan Gains is too. But yeah, Joey's gone. Joey's channel's gone. Some of the worst carnest content I've ever seen is now gone. Because of a little bit of effort by some vegans that had the balls to like debate this guy and just like demoralize him completely, like demoralize him and crush his reputation.
By the way, guess what me and Christian have been doing?
What's
fucking joining these carnivore pages and fucking destroying these people and converting people over to veganism.
Oh yeah, of course. That's what we're doing here. We have an opportunity as vegans to convert libs and conservatives. We have the rhetoric to do it. So yeah, outreach, man. All these other guys just want to make, do infield baseball all day. You have to get out and talk to these other people. That's why I'm talking to that kid with that channel. Like, I was on his channel the other day talking to him. 22,000 people watched that podcast last time I looked. So it's like, if I can get up there and talk about morality to a bunch of people that don't talk about it ever, like, I'm going to take that opportunity as an activist, obviously. But dude, we're seeing we're seeing a lot of true colors. And look at my show. I used to have like 10 dudes on this show, and now it's just you two.
Either way, man, I was proud of you today. I was super proud of you. Fucking, it's not about popularity. It's about.
That was wild though. Like, let's be honest. That
That
was
was
wild.
wild.
That show
Yeah.
was wild. Like, even his doubling down was wild. I mean, he's really
Yeah.
intelligent. That's what kills me about it. Like, he doubled down.
Yeah.
Is he really intelligent? Look at him. He's eating himself to
He still
death,
is.
guys.
I mean, I guess
Oh,
we're
look,
all
look,
fake and dumb.
look
Do
at the
intelligent
Telegram
people
chat
eat
right now.
themselves
He's
to death?
raging. Look at the Telegram chat. He's
bet
Dude, I haven't
completely
even
lost
opened it
his
yet.
mind in there.
I'm
Have you
surprised
seen it
he
yet?
hasn't been booted
No,
yet.
I just saw the one comment pop up, and I keep getting highlights. I haven't opened them yet.
Yeah. There's World War II going on in there.
With himself.
There's a lot of you know, World War One. No, World War II. There's a lot of Hitler stuff going on in there. But you know, hey, knock yourself out, bro. I'm glad I know now. You know.
I'm not sure the Hitler stuff is
You
what
gotta
we
love
were
Hitler
taught.
propaganda, though.
Yeah, no, it's a bunch of bullshit. And he's trying to
It's
twist
total
stuff,
bullshit.
trying to
False
twist
history,
natural
dude.
law like into this, into his
No,
little
and it's my point was just I mean the little that I interacted in chat, it's just you're barking up the wrong tree. Us more than anyone, we all agree that most of history is bullshit, right?
Yeah.
But it's a
Right.
total
Yeah.
logical fallacy to say, oh, the enemy of my enemy is my friend and are the good guys. You know,
Yeah.
the
Maybe you just
Nazis are
have two
cool
enemies.
because the libs say they're bad. Like, come on, man. Discernment here.
Well, I mean, within
True
war,
colors.
you know, but I mean, like, we're not trying to be at war with our mindset, are we? Like, we're trying to come to a conclusion of where life should be.
No, he's mad because blue eyes are getting allegedly weeded out of you know, I have blue eyes. I don't meet many people, but it's like these things don't matter.
I have
Well,
blue eyes.
he's not
John's kid is
wrong
black.
there,
He's
but
got blue
it's
eyes.
government policy. It doesn't mean that the black people are a bad thing. It means that governments are literally immigrating people to such an extent where they're breeding out specific traits and wiping out their own populations. It's not fucking right. You know, like we shouldn't be trying to wipe anybody out or, you know.
Yeah, eugenics is bad. We get it. You know.
Yes, we get it. We get it.
But you don't use it to like, you know,
justify hate.
And to
That's
like
fucked up.
get a bunch of people to back you up so you can coerce them in some way. It's
Yeah.
definitely not natural law. Holy shit. Like that's
No,
hysterical.
definitely not.
Wild.
Yeah.
If he's so worried about it, why doesn't
Erica's
he
like
become? Why
Poor
doesn't he
Alicia's
become
friends
not
with
a
him.
racist and not a beta and try and spread his DNA
I
as
mean,
much
I
as
never
he
added
can
him as a
and
friend on
bring those
Facebook, but
traits
we've
out.
conversated. I mean, he seemed like a pretty, you know, fun, intelligent guy.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was fun.
You know what? He did this to
He
himself.
leaves-
Let's be honest. Like he did this
Yeah,
to
no,
himself.
that's the
even,
thing. Like he can't
Yeah, he
expect
did this
me
to himself.
to react in any other way. Like Jesus Christ, dude. You're not
And
gonna
then like he got kicked off and he didn't even understand. And if you want to look at it from a corporate structure, bro, you made yourself an executive employee. What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I don't
But yeah, the
understand
other
the
night was bad.
executive employee comment.
That was so bad. I'm still in shock that episode even happened the way. I was shocked you were on his podcast to begin with, but then like the whole play out of everything was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And luckily, I mean, I think that the dude with the other channel thinks I'm kind of cool, so he's like laying off me and he like totally focused 100% on him. Which was pretty funny. No, what's his name? Chris Ruff is directing.
Oh, right.
He was pretty. It was pretty funny. Like it was funny like how he was dealing with him, but just like fucking Steve took it so bad and just like was so reactionary to all this dumb shit. I'm like, bro, you don't actually think he's hitting on you, do you? Like, are you that like and out of touch with reality that you think he's actually hitting on you, and then you're gonna like get mad
Wait a
and
minute.
start
It was
talking like a
DirectV
psycho.
that did that to him?
Yeah, it didn't even click.
Oh, you haven't seen this? Yeah.
Well, I heard you were
DirectV
debating
came on the
against
show the other
DirectV.
day.
The guy's the biggest
What's
troll
that?
in the world. What the fuck?
Yeah.
How are you gonna
Well,
give
he's
that
really good
piece
at
of
it.
shit
That's why he
kind of-
got Steve so bad. But he
Well,
wasn't able to troll
I don't
me.
doubt that. He's still a fucking
But he
beta
came on the
male.
show and we were just talking about shit like the Barry Cooper stuff. And he was being pretty reasonable.
He was.
And me and Steve had some really good points we laid out to him that he was even like fair enoughing to. And then Steve, like, I don't know, he like walked away. I don't know if he like drank some booze or something, but he came back and he was like kind of slurry and like his eyes were heavy. And he was just started. And then Chris was just fucking with him, like, "Oh, you have such pretty hair, you should brush it," and or something like that. And Steve's all, "Ooh, you gay? Are you hitting on me?" You know, and like totally was like getting all reactionary to it. And so Chris just started laying into it. He's like, "No, dude, I think you're really hot, and I really want you to have my number." And like it was really funny. And Steve was just losing his mind. And so it was
Dude,
like
he's
kind of
snapping.
funny, but then it turned dark really quick when Steve like snapped, because he was just like, and it was like he was trying to bring it up like on purpose. He's like, "Oh, I'm on a big channel. I need to throw my racism shit out." And so he like brought it up on purpose, and because he knew that Chris was gonna jump on him for it, and he'd be able to like say his statements and shit like a fucking idiot. And so he just started talking, and I was just thought, "Oh my god, this fucking dumbass. Well, see ya." You know, like, holy shit.
Yeah, I think we were definitely right a couple weeks ago when we said fucking you don't get popular by telling the fucking truth. You know what I mean? But at least you did the
Yeah.
right thing and you bailed, you know, like you
No,
get
so
popular by being
it
a
was,
fucking
dude.
pussy yes man, you know? People
I was
want
seriously
yeah.
giving him the benefit of the doubt, because there was some
A lot.
sketchy shit some people showed me, and it was like, well, you know, that was years ago, and you know, hopefully he, you know, and I saw some, you know, he's got like a bunch of videos on his website about that James True guy who's like a cannibal freaking like pedo apologist guy. And you know, like Steve has all these videos going hard against that guy, so it's like, okay, so obviously, you know, he's got some moral compass because he's not completely nuts. And so I was giving him the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not anymore, obviously. That's super crazy.
Well,
No one even told
you
me he was
can't after
racist.
that.
Like, yeah, I mean, no one even said that shit. Because
Well,
wouldn't have
he
guessed.
obviously
I would
kept
have
it
not
on the
guessed that.
DL as well
Yeah.
until he let loose finally the other night, which I didn't see everything of, but every time I would pop in, I was just like, oh, okay, that's happening.
we had a guest on, and that guest was restreaming my show to his 300,000 people. And so Steve just like saw that as an opportunity to say some dumbass shit. And you know, I had to go the next day. I had to go on DirectD's channel and talk to him about it, because he's like, dude, you believe this shit too? And it's like, no, I don't fucking believe it. That was the first time I've heard it, you know? And he's like, well, and this is the dude I don't want to be like getting lectured by. You know, this is a guy I was talking all kinds of shit to, you know, like,
talking about
so
humbling,
fucking dumbass Steve puts me in this fucked up situation with these people I don't want to be in this situation with. I want to be teaching them natural law. I don't want to be fucking talking about racism and stupid people that come on my show, you know? Like fucking idiots, man. Like,
Yeah, talk about going back 200 years for no reason.
yeah. But, you know, these guys have been around, you know, these guys have been, there are these weird dudes. And then he was just all, oh, DirectD's an op, DirectD's an op, DirectD's an op, DirectD's an op, over and over and over and over and over and over again. I'm like, bro, you're looking like the op, you motherfucker. Like,
You're the one coming up on my show talking crazy shit. Like, so how the fuck is he the op when he was being respectful? You fucking you insulted that guy, and that, you know, like.
I mean, honestly, full
Yikes.
spectrum. Even if that's his message, who do you think you're going to teach with that delivery?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I just still kind of in awe that that just
Unreal.
happened. And
It's just.
We'll find out that you
I really
with the
enjoy
wrong
how you
one,
held out
man.
for the podcast, though. That was really good. How you didn't say a word to him until we got.
Well, yeah, because it's like, dude, if I just talked to him behind the scenes, I did talk to him behind the scenes, and he just blew it off. He's like, oh, no one saw that. And I'm like, bro, like, no one saw that? He's all, we were just, it was too, he's always too low energy for anybody to be watching that. And I was just like, what the fuck kind of carnif bullshit argument is that? It's on my fucking channel for the rest of my, like, are you kidding? Like, we went
Even
from
if he's
watching
right.
Mark Passio to you talking about racism, you know?
Dude, even if he's right, even if not a single fucking person saw that,
Fucking losers!
what? Well, fucking, what does that do to his soul? What does that do to a person? Integrity is what, like, what you do when people aren't watching. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
he
and it
chooses to
exposes his
lack
true
it.
nature and his beliefs.
Sad. I mean, I will say this. I think fucking racism is an ignorance thing. You know? It's really sad. I think people are brainwashed, but like, we are part of the truth community. It should be one of those obvious truths that, you know, that's fucked up shit. What the fuck,
Yeah.
you know?
No, there's no special groups. Like, that's how it's supposed to, you know, like, that's how we're going to figure things out, is when we realize that there's no groups, that we're all, you know, we're all individuals and we're all as important as the next person. It's all these groups. These guys want, oh, my group is getting attacked. What are you talking about? Oh, the powers that be exist, therefore they're controlling white people to mix with brown people, and I don't like it. Like, holy crap. That's so ridiculous.
Dude, if these people really were against it and wanted their traits to survive, instead of whining, playing the victim and talking shit to
made a
black
perfectly
people,
good point.
they should be out there fucking.
Yeah.
Spread.
Go
you
do
know
it.
what I mean?
That's the most you can do, is go out there and make white babies. If that's what you care about so much.
Just do that. Why do you have to also be an asshole?
Yeah.
Like a piece of shit.
Why you got to try and make people,
Like,
you
that
know,
would be
like,
the most moral way, if that's, you know, your belief is you want to preserve your people, quote unquote, to voluntarily procreate with other white people.
It doesn't even have to be white people. You fuck a bunch of black people, you eliminate half their DNA right there. You're fucking fighting for the fight you think you're fighting for. And you get to have sex with beautiful women and be friendly. Nice. Fucking, what's the problem?
Nice.
Right? I mean,
Yeah,
fucking
man.
isn't a mean thing, I don't think, you know? Like, at least most of the time it's not. Instead, these
Not
people
supposed
want
to be.
spread
I
hate.
mean, shit.
I don't know, man. My dad, he's fucking ambidextrous. I thought that was the coolest trait. And I even said, I'm going to have a bunch of babies until I have a kid that's ambidextrous like my dad. I have that in me at somewhere, you know? Like, it's cool to want to pass on traits. It's, you know, like,
Peak
my
male's
kid
gotta
wants-
have ambidextrous genes.
Yeah.
Who?
A peak male's gotta have ambidextrous.
male specimen.
Yeah.
Oh,
peak male specimen.
whatever.
Gotta have those genes in there somewhere.
I don't know about all that, but my dad, he was quite a fucking specimen. He really was. He was strong. He was incredibly smart. Had fucking cool traits like ambidextrous. Fucking.
That is cool.
Yeah, for sure. The guy was the type of guy that would read like a book every night, if not 2 or 3. He could read a book in a couple hours and love to read. Yeah, I wish I could read like him. Like, I have to read 2-3 times sometimes to like retain the information. But I do like I don't quit reading. I try really hard. I think I was hurt by vaccines, honestly, but whatever. It ain't gonna stop me from educating myself and becoming better, you know. Oh, but I'm whining about, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where'd Christian go? He drop off or what?
I don't know. Yeah, he
He
hasn't
dipped
come
out.
back up.
And where's Braxton been lately? Why hasn't he been on the show?
Oh, there he is.
You'd have to ask him.
He's around though. He's in the comments.
He's been in the comments. He's
Sorry,
the
guys, I froze out.
Braxton's a very, very, very gifted writer. And I've noticed since he hasn't been around talking all the time, his shit's even better. He wrote something to me the other day that was just like, someone turn the mic off. There we go. I heard it was John Bob, I think. Or yeah. So I don't know. He wrote something to me that almost like brought a tear to my eye. It's written so well. Like he's just like concentrating his arguments and they're getting better. So he's gonna have to come up here and let him rip soon. What the hell? What's that echo?
It wasn't me, man. My shit was muted.
It's always fucking. It's always Christian. Christian's got the worst audio etiquette ever.
So fucking bad. Fucking, I'm buddies with him. I talk
There was
to
some
him every
comment
day.
a couple months ago. There was some comment. Who the fuck is eating chips? And it was Christian just eating chips in his mic. Hilarious. Yeah. Braxton is sword shopping. Yeah, so this Mike, I guess this is an older Mike the vegan video, but it's about fermented foods and B12. Like they're finding like massive amounts of B12 in like all fermented foods. It's pretty fucking dope.
Here and today, B12 in plant foods, a video that shouldn't have anybody changing their behavior. Vegans should still be eating B12 fortified foods and taking B12 supplements. But this is a rare situation where I was so intrigued researching a topic that I just kept building research on it. And then when the time came to actually make a video, my only choice was to make a video about this. You know, my paradigm on this was just busted over and over again, especially with respect to a lot of traditional foods out there and research that I had not seen. And so we just, in the pursuit of knowledge, hopefully you're as interested in this as me. Let's just go. Again, just super disclaimer, don't stop taking B12 supplements or getting fortified foods as a vegan. I am not going to be betting my red blood cell count on any of this information. But I think that there's a compelling case that more B12 has been eaten from plant foods throughout human history than we had thought. Why does this matter? It doesn't really matter that much to me. I don't care if we were eating all our B12 from meat in the past. I still want to know, what the science says and what the answers are. And it is the case that we show lower diseases with plant-based diets, which means appears we've adapted to that. Maybe we were eating very little meat, but even if you think that we were more meat-based, there certainly were long periods of time, even beyond B12 circulation, where we probably weren't getting enough B12 from meat. I mean, just Google B12 content of meat. You get this USDA source saying 0.5 micrograms per 3 ounces or 85 grams. I'm sure a lot of meats are higher, but that means that failing to reach B12 intake from meat, on a weekly, monthly basis and on was probably likely. So can we find other sources of B12? I've talked about water in the past, and even though we can get around 2 micrograms per liter or whatever, that's probably not the case everywhere. There's a lot of variation. And so I'm like, are there any other sources out there? Well, from this 2022 study, which was essentially focused on finding vegan forms of active B12, they said, quote, "It is possible that daily recommendations for B12 can be met by a varied diet containing non-animal B12 food sources." It's definitely possible, but it might not be smart at this point, as we will cover. But I do want to back up and look at where a lot of the confusion happened historically with B12 in plant foods. And that has to do with analogs. We'll just cover this really quickly. You have your actual active types of B12, and then you have these analogs or coronoids, sometimes referred to as cobamides. These analogs are a problem because they can raise B12 blood levels without actually doing what they need to, and actually potentially prevent real B12 from doing their job. You might have heard, oh, spirulina has B12. Well, it appears that up to 83% of that B12 is actually analogs, which could be blocking the real B12. And because of older measuring techniques, this was being mixed up with real B12. Thankfully, now the more recent studies are using high-performance liquid chromatography, which will quantify those 4 bioactive forms of B12. But even better than measuring B12 in food, real human studies looking at methylmalonic acid, which is a measurement of B12 activity in the body, is the best. And we need a bunch more of those studies on all the foods we're going to get to, but let's just get going. You might already be aware of the 2 plant foods that we know of that create B12 with a symbiotic relationship with bacteria in their tissues. That's duckweed / water lentils and sea buckthorn. We have several studies showing that there's quite high levels of B12 in active forms in these plants. That duckweed grows pretty worldwide and is in some Asian cuisines, but it doesn't still appear to be eaten all over the world. Sea buckthorn can be found across Europe and in Asia and a little bit in Africa. Who knows the historical role with B12? But there are a few more studies that kind of blew my mind. And the first one that I hadn't seen was this 2016 German one that used that type of chromatography. And they found some active B12 in random plants I wasn't expecting. For example, quite a bit in couch grass and a bit in a plant called horseheel, also known as elf dock, which is in the sunflower family. If there aren't any analogs in that couch grass, 10 grams of dried material would reach your daily allowance. And yes, it has actually been dried and used with flour to make bread. So, who knows if people got B12 that way accidentally. I'd love to see more studies on those. But what I think is more likely to be, what was bridging the gap throughout ancient human history for B12 is fermented foods, which we just consumed in such a large variety in actual solid foods as well as fermented drinks. We did this for preservation in times before refrigeration, virtually all of human history, as well as to fight pathogens. There were times where we were drinking essentially lightly alcoholic beer as water to prevent disease. And the preserved food that really launched this whole investigation for me was from that Polish study I mentioned recently, where they just were looking at popular products in a market to see how much B12 they had for vegetarians and vegans to get. And pickled parsley juice just totally destroyed with its B12. Using that chromatography, they found 50 micrograms of bioactive B12 per liter. I'm not going to be drinking a liter of that, but still, it got me wondering, looking around at all the fermented foods that humans tend to eat around the world, how much B12 would we actually find? I wish I had time-traveling nanorobots to take samples. I don't. And this is where we have to talk about the B12 variation in fermented foods and why it occurs, because from that same Polish study, the sauerkraut had virtually no B12. However, looking at other studies like this one that looked at 4 different types of sauerkraut in Japan, 3 didn't really have any, but 1 had 0.5 micrograms per 100 grams, again, of active B12 through chromatography. And remember, the USDA says that a lot of meat just has 0.5 micrograms per 85 grams, so very comparable there, a nutritionally significant amount. And this really is due to the type of bacteria as well as just how it is cultured, how long it is cultured, etc. Because if you purposefully add a type of propionate bacteria to sauerkraut, you get up to about 7 micrograms per 100 grams of sauerkraut. And some lactobacillus also make B12, so you can realize, the possibilities here are endless. Another fermented food that some vegans believe is a source of B12 is tempeh, which again exposes the variation that we can see here. Because, go to the store, according to the USDA, we're looking at 0.08 micrograms per 100 grams according to the USDA, but go to Jakarta, Indonesia, And your average is about 2 micrograms of B12 per 100 gram servings, although that's a little bit older. Analogs weren't measured in that one. But this exposes a trend that we can see where homemade versions of fermented foods are going to have more B12 than the commercial sterilized, cranked out fast versions of a food. And that brings me to South Korea. This study looked at the B12 amount in some fermented traditional Korean foods, like some soy-based ones, which when made in a homemade setting by people had a reasonable amount. We're talking between 0.7 and almost 2 micrograms per 100 grams. But then you look at the factory made ones and the range goes down to virtually none at all. The researchers pointed to the longer fermentation times of homemade products compared to the non-homemade products to explain the difference. However, it could also just be that garden vegetables have more cobalamin. And when you add cobalamin to a fermentation process where you have B12 creating bacteria, you can increase the amount of B12 that is made, obviously. And then, of course, just hygiene and sterilization in factories lowers the diversity and chances that there's going to be a B12 producing bacteria in there. And get this, from this Korean centenarian study, they estimated that about 30% of their B12 came from plant-based products, talking fermented foods and other ones, which is crazy. Anyway, one particular type of fermented foods that people don't talk about as much, which is essentially ubiquitous in traditional cultures, is alkaline fermented foods, ones that, don't go acidic, they go up in pH. As this study mentions, this is a common practice in places like Africa, of course, where we initially evolved. And a lot of times this is fermented legumes, so tempeh would qualify here. And here is a chart showing various alkaline fermented foods, and a lot of them actually have B12 despite being plant-based. Dawa dawa is one name for the fermented locust beans from Africa, which allegedly has B12, and I had to dig, and I found this study here, which in a chart in the way back of the study claims that these fermented locust beans had 450 micrograms of B12 per 100 grams. It seems like it's a typo. We need to repeat this, but if it's anywhere near that, these little fermented bean balls could have prevented a lot of B12 deficiency across the continent of Africa over the years. And it keeps going with B12 foods from this paper, quote, nutritionally significant amounts of vitamin B12 were also found in the Indonesian fermented.
What did you say?
Didn't John the Just eat locust bean?
Maybe if locust was a bean.
No, locust bean. That
you're talking.
Christian, you know what we're talking about, right?
Huh?
You know what we're talking about, right?
It's talking about the Bible.
Didn't John have a sailboat and all he had was like locust and something, and everyone thought it was grasshoppers, but it was actually locust bean. Yeah. So the locust bean has B12 in it.
Yeah.
So if locust bean has B12 in it and we need B12 to be vegan, fucking hit the nail on the head.
I mean, personally, my personal belief is that at one time, most plants contained high levels of B12. And the reason they don't anymore is because of humans. We just fucking dump shit in our waterways, and it just, we are where we are now.
Yeah.
So
food. Aunt Jom, probably said that wrong, but apparently it's a little bit like tempeh. All right, now for drinks, and a lot of these did surprise me, fermented ones. We can look to that Polish study, which just quickly referenced a type of fermented black tea out of Japan, which allegedly contained up to 20 micrograms per liter of tea drink. So like half a cup of it would reach your daily requirement. This is unusual, though, and it is important to note from this study that non-fermented normal black tea and other teas don't cut it. We're talking having to eat like 100 to 200 grams of straight leaves to get enough. And get this, the wildly popular drink kombucha, which is from various teas, appears to be a major possible source of B12, you may have seen labels like this saying it contains 8,000% of your daily requirement for B12, despite not having it in the added ingredients. What's going on? From this study with black tea as the base, they claim 0.8 milligrams per milliliter, which would be completely insane. I'm pretty sure they meant micrograms, which would line up with that 8,000%. And I have to cautiously assume that the varying B12 claims on kombucha product labels is the direct result of modern testing for active B12. So don't assume it has it unless it specifically says it on the
I've been
label.
curious
This
about that
GT
for a minute
kombucha
now.
bottle only claims 20% of daily value. Moving on. And in terms of
Yeah, no, I've been curious
Fucking
about
love
that
that
for a
guy.
little time now, and I've been curious about the fermentation with kombucha and like what the actual B12 levels are, because you know when the companies do list it or when the local people do like make it and stuff, we have really no idea what the possibility of the B12 levels could be. I mean, but I've heard wild numbers before, so I'm curious.
B12, but
Honestly, I'm shocked your wife hasn't done that yet. That seems like the type of thing your
She
wife would
does.
do.
Dude,
Make
she's got a bunch of
recommendations.
it in the fridge right now. She just made it the other day.
Oh no shit.
Of
Okay.
course, it's funny. You already know that. Come on now.
Well, yeah.
Dude, my wife
Christian's
does
gonna
everything.
fuck you up, dude.
Slap you in the back of the fucking ankle head.
Yeah,
Can't
you've
fly.
never mentioned that, but yeah, I guess I would have been surprised if she didn't.
There you go. Process of elimination theory, John.
It makes sense.
You know her, bro. Like she don't bake cakes. She carves them out of watermelons.
fermented
Yeah, I
rice
was-
dishes, I found a bunch of totally unbacked claims, like this dude on YouTube just being like, fermented rice, amazing source of B12 with these random vegetables added. That's a little bit less compelling than how this study took particular strains of lactobacillus from an East Indian tribe's rice drink that is fermented, and that was very effective at producing B12 at 5 micrograms per 100 grams of finished product, though they didn't actually test the rice drink, which is annoying. And as this study mentions, palm wine, which is traditionally consumed in Africa, had a surprisingly large amount of B12, which equates to approximately 20 to 30 micrograms per 100 milliliters. Super epic, and more data needed. Then we have another Indian study that looked at fermented date syrup. I'm not sure if you really drink it or whatever, but even though they didn't test the actual B12 content of it, which really frustrates me, they found that it raised B12 levels and improved blood cell counts. I don't know. I was trying to corroborate this, and moving back to just straight up solid food in the form of plants, it appears from this study that certain date varieties happen to have a notable amount of B12, at least according to this study, up to 2 micrograms per 100 grams or 0. You never know. B12 is fun and predictable. Now we need to move on to the mystifying, sometimes paradoxical potential form of B12 known as purple laver, or nori, which is just what you wrap around sushi. Levels have been reported in excess of 100 micrograms per 100 grams of material. And, studies like this one say nori is the most suitable vitamin B12 source for vegetarians presently available. Okay. And they found that by feeding nori, urinary methylmalonic acid secretion went down to undetectable at 20 days when given nori, in rats, at least. However, we have conflicting data in humans, and it might have to do with the preparation style. But first, we have this interesting study that really just looked at 6 young vegans who were on a sort of particular Japanese whole food vegan diet that included nori, despite having been vegan for way longer than their liver could recirculate. Their serum B12 levels and blood cell counts, hemoglobin, etc., were totally fine, no deficiencies. However, we have to be really careful here because, as Jack Norris of veganhealth.org warned, based on a 1999 study, quote, the results indicate that B12 in raw nori can be changed into harmful inactive B12 analogs by drying, and that dried nori decreases B12 status. Yeah, the study he mentions found that by drying nori, you can jump those analogs from just 25% of total cobalamin to like 65% of total cobalamin, which totally changes the equation. When you then feed those to people, we ended up with worse urinary methylmalonic acid in the dried group, and then the raw group stayed about the same. And these weren't vegans. Their status was likely normal. So who knows what would happen with somebody who already had low? Maybe it would have gone up in that case. We don't know. But for the most interesting study, we have this one, which took 10 vegans on sort of like a whole food diet with nori and mushrooms, which we'll get to, and 20 vegans who were just supplemented B12. And the results are interesting. Those non-supplemented vegans were getting about 3.4 micrograms per day. 2.4, again, is how much we need. And they got exactly 2.4 from nori, the rest from mushrooms. And the results were the non-supplemented nori vegans were the worst of the group, and the B12 supplement vegans were the best of the group for B12 status. Looking to methylmalonic acid, those nori vegans were just skirting the line of 370, which is the cutoff for deficiency. Their homocysteine and their blood markers were normal in the nori vegans, but the conclusion of the study is like, yeah, with nori, you can like skirt the line and barely keep yourself from having a bad deficiency. Maybe going further than the 8 months of the study, they don't know. But the study says they got 0.7 micrograms per day from mushrooms. So what about mushrooms? They're not exactly plants, but still, they're considered a vegan food. Well, I think they're a little bit sketchy. A lot of mushrooms just have, virtually no B12 or low amounts of B12. But shiitake is proposed to be higher. However, you would still have to eat quite a lot of shiitake to get enough. And again, it's a variability thing. You can have a 30-gram serving of dried shiitake and get either 6 micrograms of B12, which would be awesome, or like virtually none. However, 2 more interesting points. There doesn't appear to be a concern with B12 analogs in these mushrooms. And also, people think, oh, it's the manure and the bacteria in that. Well, we're still getting these results from direct log-grown shiitake mushrooms. And finally, I have to go deep into theoretical land here because I found a study that I thought was really interesting about analogs that I just had to share for people who want to nerd out. And that is this one saying that some of these analogs might actually work like B12 does in terms of one of the main cofactor processes that B12 actually works with, and that is methylmalonyl-CoA mutase mamut. Just like my little dog Diego, it's mamut. He really is a mutt. Everyone thinks he's a Yorkie, but he's mostly Chihuahua. Anyway, so this MMUT process requires B12 to create succinyl-CoA, which from Oregon State, quote, plays an important role in the production of energy from lipids and protein, and is also required for the synthesis of hemoglobin. So this is most of what B12 does, with blood cells and anemia, etc. The other cofactor thing is homocysteine. Anyway, the study found that MMUT is able to use several, but not all of these B12 analogs or cobamides as cofactors in a petri dish, at least. So we don't know if these analogs would get where they need to go to do what they would need to do, but they also found out which analogs work and which analogs don't work. A lot of these are in food, and the context of the study was looking for a solution for people with genetic disorders where they might not be able to use that normal B12 here, and maybe you could plug in a medication in the form of a B12 analog. Anyway, we've gone way too deep into the theoretical. This most likely won't matter for anybody. We can still get cheap B12 supplements. And even if we wanted to, in a vegan society, for example, have a system where B12 is just naturally baked in to the food products, you can, pun not intended, but good pun, you can actually, have B12 in bread, for example, by adding that B12 creating fermenting bacteria. A study also found that if you put B12 into hydroponic growth medium, you can get like your RDA and 2 lettuce leaves. So yeah, any fermented food could theoretically have B12 created by itself. Or of course, it's not that big of a deal to just add synthetic B12. It still gets the job.
I wish he did a video on fucking parasites in B12. That shit sucks it right out of you. That's why everybody's deficient. 40% of meat eaters are deficient in it as well.
Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road.
Follow the yellow brick road to the magical land of B12. where one magic supplement will bring you back from the brink of insanity and death and cure every disease you've ever had or ever wanted to have, even cancer. Is it a placebo, you may ask, or some type of snake oil? No,
Ooh, snake
it's
oil.
B12, and it breaks all the rules of nature. But
Aw.
first, before we worship at the altar of B12, let's find out how this magical, crucial, essential bacteria vitamin supplement was first created. From the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine study, Recognizing, Treating, and Understanding Pernicious Anemia, published in 2008 on the government's prestigious National Institute of Health website, comes this fascinating and sketchy history of how B12 originated and was eventually marketed to vegans as that one magical bacteria vitamin supplement that nature forgot to provide in plants or pre-existing in the human body. By the way, it doesn't say anything about B12 being found in the dirt or water.
That is one big final.
Vitamin B12 was initially created as an alleged cure for pernicious anemia. The first case diagnosed as such was in 1824. Although the cause was never investigated, the patient, who subsequently died, exhibited all the symptoms of food poisoning, possibly shellfish poisoning, inflamed stomach mucous membranes, diarrhea, extreme thirst, and vomiting. Not coincidentally, the same doctor who diagnosed this case, British surgeon Dr. James Combe, published a paper a few years later on that very subject called The Poisonous Effects of Eating Mussels. It turns out that the mussel beds in that particular city where the patient died were located really close to the sewage outlets. In other words, the patient was not suffering from any lack of vitamin or beneficial bacteria, but most likely from having been poisoned by sewage-tainted shellfish. This one case apparently set off a whole chain reaction of doctors trying to find a cure for this pernicious anemia without even knowing the cause. One clueless doctor even tried treating patients with arsenic. But it wasn't until a vivisection experiment in the 1920s, using dogs who had been bled out to simulate an anemic condition, these dying dogs were fed raw cow's liver. Although there was no proof how long it actually extended their lives, it was deemed a cure. The raw liver was then fed to 45 human patients in a trial, most of whom dropped out because they found eating the liver incredibly disgusting. Nevertheless, the experiment was considered a success, even though fruit and iron pills were also included in the diet. It's also not clear how closely they were monitored. The doctors even admitted themselves that it was inconclusive with such a small group of people and with other food being given. It should also be noted that all doctors involved received Nobel Prizes. So it was then marketed as a supplement, a raw liver extract, to make it more palatable to the public. But it still just did not sell well enough. So they decided to switch the market over to farmers to give this crap to their animals, marketing it as a miracle cure for anemia. Basically, the farmers were now feeding herbivorous animals their own organs, essentially making them cannibals. The farmers made excellent customers, as they did not question if the stuff worked or not, and they bought it in bulk as an antibiotic. But the makers of this extract did not give up trying to sell it to humans. This was where the real money was to be made. So, extracts of raw liver were sold as intramuscular injections throughout the 1950s. And it was in 1948 that this extract of raw cow liver, now with kidneys also added in, was officially given the name vitamin B12 and touted as a cure for pernicious anemia. Again, all doctors involved received Nobel Prizes. So let's review. This extract of cow liver, sold as vitamin B12, was never obtained from dirt or water, as many vegans now are taught to believe. It was derived from the raw liver of a cow to treat what was most likely simple food poisoning, with absolutely no proof that it was effective or necessary. The whole concept of this product was based on the theory that animal organs are beneficial to humans. And of course, when veganism started showing signs of exponentially growing, that became the perfect consumer group to target. After all, vegans were obviously deficient in animal products, and especially the newer, less confident vegans could easily be persuaded that they needed to supplement with something that plants could not provide. And it was pure marketing trickery to label the product as a vitamin, so as to bypass regulations that a drug approval would have required. One of the very few known pioneers questioning B12 as far back as the 70s was Dr. Vivian Vetrano, who lived to be 91 years old as a vegan, who never supplemented. She said, if vitamin B12 is not in fresh fruits, vegetables, nuts, and legumes, and if bacteria does not manufacture in the body where humans can absorb it, then we don't need it. The only other explanation is that nature made a great big mistake. Do you think nature made a great big mistake? I don't. I believe humans are 100% herbivores that require only plants for nutrients. And when it's claimed that you used to be able to obtain this mysterious bacteria vitamin from the dirt and the water, how many decades has it been since anybody last ate a fruit or vegetable that they hadn't meticulously washed off first? And when was the last time you got your water from a fresh mountain stream? So if everything is so sanitized and the soil so depleted now, how the hell are we still able to get all the other essential vitamins, nutrients, and beneficial bacteria from plants that grow in it, except for this magical B12? And why isn't B12 available from the same plant sources as the other B complex vitamins? The soil and water explanation seems to be something that vegans have added on to explain why it's no longer available in the vegan diet. But it makes no sense. Once you follow the money trail of B12 and how it came to demonize the perfection of a vegan diet, you will see it leads directly back to pharma, who manufacture it, and the meat and dairy industry, who want you to buy their animal products. Why does the Vegan Society tell vegans it's dangerous not to take B12? Because they're making money selling the supplements. The truth is that these synthetic supplements are made in the same drug labs that make vaccines, using the cheapest toxic waste byproducts to maximize profit. Sources of the bacteria include dairy whey, which is waste from the dairy industry, activated sewage sludge, coal tar, and strains used to make dangerous antibiotics like synthetic penicillin and streptomycin. As for the list of deficiency symptoms, these could apply to 20 other medical conditions. Just the side effects of taking B12 are much more frightening. The B12 patch has a listed warning that it can cause blood clotting and heart failure. The supplements cause skin toxicity with outbreaks of severe acne, as well as increased risk of cancer, as shown in 2 recent studies.
Interesting. Think you're muted, bud. Think you're muted, bud. There we go.
Bracky, you want to come up and watch this?
That was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. We'll have to look into it a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely open to looking into that. The reason I'm 100% willing to look into that is because when I first switched over to veganism, I didn't give a shit about B12. I didn't even look into it, didn't care. I just lived my life, and my health and my performance were just like growing. So I honestly, it was like,
so to speak.
It was like almost a manipulation for me to start thinking about my B12 and then trying to supplement that. So yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious now.
Yeah. Well, we don't, I mean, you know, Ellie's gotten her blood work. Her B12 was fine. You know, we don't supplement it. I mean, we maybe have a few times. We eat a lot of food that has it in it. Processed food.
Same.
Like, so, you know, I don't think it's as big of an issue. I think the omega ratios were probably more big of a deal.
Oh,
Omega
for sure. No,
Yeah.
I'm just more concerned about the angle of it, like what she was explaining about like being sold a marketing scheme. Like that's
Yeah,
something.
for sure.
Big pharma.
Yeah.
You know, they're like that Uncle Bob that nobody wants to go to because like he's not a good dude. You know, he acts nice, but he's not a good dude.
I think we're gonna watch this one instead because I don't have any natural law heads to laugh at this video with. So we'll watch this one instead. Vegan Gains, who's our another mild degenerate, but solid ally in veganism. I think he's critiquing Mikhaila's talk in the Senate.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of You're Wrong and I'm Always Right. And today we're going to be looking at a short Mikhaila Peterson posted to her YouTube channel claiming a vegan diet is unsustainable and all that other crap. This should be a quick one. So without further ado, let's take a look at the nonsense.
I don't think veganism is sustainable long term at all. I think it causes muscle loss.
So a vegan diet is unsustainable long term and you're going to lose muscle. Well, I've been on a vegan diet for 13 years and if anything, looks like I gained muscle. I've also been able to bench 410 pounds without the use of any steroids or performance enhancing drugs. That's not something that many people can do, and I literally have not seen anybody who has followed a carnivore diet long-term being able to bench that kind of weight. I even tried to do a Google search, trying to see if anybody who's been following a carnivore diet for even a few years, I have not been able to see any carnivore dieters bench that sort of weight. They may be out there, but I literally haven't seen any of them being able to do it. I even recently did a debate with Carnivore Muscle, guy on YouTube who follows a carnivore diet. He's a bodybuilder. He even takes steroids, and even he cannot bench that kind of weight. So if I'm an example, then it looks like a vegan diet is in fact sustainable long-term, and you're not going to lose muscle just from being on a vegan diet. What's also incredibly hypocritical here is that Mikhaila Peterson doesn't really have any muscle tone. She's skinny, she's not strong, she's weak, unfit, and she admits herself she doesn't exercise.
I don't exercise. I don't. I should. I feel better when I do, but I haven't been because my life's been.
I don't
hectic.
exercise. I just get plastic surgery.
Particularly the last 5 or so. Plus, I was so sick to begin with. Didn't have any energy.
So Mikhaila Peterson's excuse for why she's so weak and skinny and unfit is her life is just too hectic. Well, this is a wealthy woman who is paying for 2 full-time nannies to take care of her children, but somehow she still can't find time to exercise.
How do you manage to work so much with a baby?
Hit the like button, everybody.
So I work from home,
Thank you.
but I have a rota nanny that lives with me. A rota nanny means a rotational nanny. So I have 2 ladies that swap out every 2 weeks. So nobody gets exhausted. So I have 24/7 baby care if I need it.
So this woman is a massive liar who loves to make excuses. She claims that a vegan diet will cause you to lose muscle, but she doesn't have any muscle herself while on her carnivore diet. She's weak and skinny, and her only excuse is, my life is too hectic to go to the gym. But clearly it isn't. She's paying for 2 full-time nannies that are taking care of her kids. This is a wealthy woman who has every opportunity to go to the gym, lift weights, get bigger and stronger, but she doesn't. And I'd imagine that's partly because her terrible, stupid, restrictive carnivore diet doesn't give her the energy to have any motivation to exercise.
Brain fog.
Telling vegans that you're gonna lose muscle. And I do know Mikhaila Peterson's husband goes to the gym and weight trains. I don't know if he's on a carnivore diet or not, but I know he's not vegan. So what's the excuse there? Why am I so much bigger and stronger than your husband despite being vegan? I thought a vegan diet made you lose muscle. Let's see your husband bench 410 pounds like I can. I sure as hell know he can't do it. So did you marry a beta male? Does your husband just have the weak beta male genes? Or is it the case that a vegan
John
diet
Bob is missing
doesn't
out.
make
Yup.
muscle mass. Speaking of sustainability, there are an innumerable amount of anecdotes that you can find online with people just trying a carnivore diet, even in the short term, experiencing pretty bad side effects like irregular heartbeats, muscle cramping, skin issues, digestive issues, and even big carnivore diet influencers like Paul Saladino going
Low
off the carnivore
testosterone.
diet because they admit it is not sustainable for most people long term.
It's about 2 years into the carnivore diet, I started noticing persistence of unpleasant symptoms. So testosterone dropped to around 500 total, sleep disturbances, palpitations, muscle cramps when I was surfing or climbing. And I started to think, okay, maybe long-term ketosis is not great for me. And I was definitely in ketosis at the time, monitoring blood ketones with a meter, not deep ketosis, but definitely ketosis. And so at that point, I started to dig into the research a little bit more and understood that insulin signaling is critical at the level of the kidney to hold on to minerals, to hold on to potassium, calcium, sodium, chloride, magnesium, and that in long-term ketosis in
He
most
looks like a
humans,
monkey.
you're going to become so electrolyte depleted that it's almost impossible to resolve that with enormous amounts of electrolytes, right? You can take all of the electrolytes you want. You can do so much salt. Your body's really not going to be able to hold on to those without some sort of an insulin signal at the level of the kidney. I've experienced this. Tons of people experience this with long-term ketosis. So at that point, I had to really kind of look at what I was doing and make this sort of learning judgment that long-term ketosis was not a great thing for me and probably not a great thing for most humans. And at that point, I added honey and then fruit to my diet, and it's been an evolution since then for probably the last 3 years. So now I've been eating fruit, honey as my main sources of carbohydrates.
So a carnivore diet gives men low testosterone,
Honey.
causes dehydration, makes you deficient in minerals, gives you sleep disturbances, muscle cramps. But yeah, the diet is definitely sustainable long term.
And I don't think that you can add in different supplements to get everything you could be getting from meat. So I'm not a fan of veganism.
So Mikhaila Peterson is a complete lying hypocrite here because she's claiming a vegan diet is deficient in vitamins and minerals and not even supplements will help you cover that gap. But Mikhaila Peterson's diet is deficient in vitamins and minerals, and she has taken supplements to fill that gap. Now, one of the most common vitamin deficiencies you're going to see on a carnivore diet is folate deficiencies. Folate is mostly found in high fiber plant foods, and if you're not eating those foods and you're only eating skeletal muscle tissue like Mikhaila Peterson on her lion diet, you are going to become folate deficient. Now, this is especially dangerous if you're pregnant because folate deficiencies cause neural tube defects in children. And if you have a pregnancy where you are deficient in folate, you can cause your child to be mentally disabled and physically disabled. And Mikhaila Peterson knew this, so she was taking folate injections during her pregnancy.
Any food or supplement you recommend for pregnancy, I think on any restricted diet and any diet, it's just the standard American diet for sure, you should be monitoring your vitamins. I know now that your vitamin levels aren't just from what you eat, they're also from your environment. My vitamin levels were totally fine for like 5 years. And then I moved into this particularly moldy house that made me really sick, and a whole bunch of them plummeted. This was right before I got pregnant.
Always
So
with the
fortunately,
moldy
I had
houses.
started supplementing
Good
the
Lord.
really deficient vitamins
So
prior
many.
to
I've heard
pregnancy.
it so many
So
times.
folate, for example, I was taking by injection.
Now, Mikhaila Peterson said her folate deficiency was caused by mold. That's just an absolute lie. This is a predictable deficiency that you see in many people going on the carnivore diet. Mikhaila Peterson also doesn't eat any organs. She admits this herself.
Are you eating organ meat now for the baby? Hell no. Okay. This diet's hard enough with a meat aversion. I don't like organs. The idea of liver.
A carnivore doesn't
was
like
so
organs? That's
nauseating.
crazy.
So the idea that her folate deficiency was caused by mold is just absolutely ridiculous. It's caused by her overly restrictive diet. And even she admits her diet is overly restrictive and nobody should be eating like her.
By
So
no
she
means
just
do I
eats
think that you
muscle?
should be
Is that
only
what I'm
eating
grasping here? She
meat
just eats muscle?
like me. It doesn't even feel like that's what I should be doing. Right? Like
the fact that I wanted a cucumber so badly is just like, it's just some vegetables. Like, it's not that big a deal.
So this weak, skinny, unfit woman who admits her diet is stupid, overly restrictive, who has had to take vitamin and mineral supplements during her pregnancy because her overly restrictive diet put her children at risk of physical and mental disabilities, is telling you a vegan diet is unsustainable long-term and will make you lose muscle. I hope over the course of this video you have learned that Mikhaila Peterson is not someone you should take seriously, and she is completely and utterly full of shit.
Yep.
I mean, you shouldn't take health advice from unhealthy people. That's like common sense. Probably one of my number one argument to carnivores.
No, I mean, it's always some obese guy telling us that we're unhealthy, you know?
Oh, no. I always point that out in the vegan
And
groups.
that
Or
sugar's
the,
bad
in the,
and fat's good and all that stuff.
in the carnivore groups, I always point out to those guys, I'm like, you know, what blows my mind is all you guys are unhealthy. It's clear as day. You all have super high cholesterol, and your only argument is pointing your finger at your 2% gym bros and say, well, look at them. Like, what?
I just posted some video of these two bodybuilders in 2016, and then them both now, and one of them had to carry the other guy into the room because his body's so fucked up from bodybuilding. Like, not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be lean. I saw a picture.
Yeah.
You posted some old picture of yourself up the other day, didn't you?
Me? Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were chubby, huh?
Oh, dude, I was big. Oh, no, that picture was not me. No, that was me making fun of, that was a picture of a guy I was trolling.
Oh, okay. I've done that before.
Yeah. No, I was big, though. I was about 235 pounds, and I was a type 2 diabetic, and I had onset cardio. I'm 5'8", bro.
Holy shit.
I got big, yeah. Let's, hold on. Let's see if I got, oh, man. I don't have any pictures in my room of it, because my wife was pregnant one of the times, so she's got all the baby photos and stuff. And dude, I was big, and what it was is when I was in the military, I had such a high diet because of our workout regimen and what we were being put through that I never changed my diet when I got out. And I packed it on, and then I was getting sick, and then I went to the VA, and this is the part 2 of the fuckery of the military when you go to the VA, and then the pharmaceutical industry gets involved with you, and then oh, dude, it's such a shit show. I mean, John will tell you, when they had the Patient's Choice bill that was out during the Trump administration, they removed it, but I was on so many medications, and I stopped taking them, trying to just figure things out. They penalized my disability. They penalized it. They were like, well, we can't pay you out because you're not taking it because you're diagnosed with a few terminal illnesses. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Really? And because of my diagnosis with my PTSD, they're like, yeah, no, you have to. And if you don't, we have the right to basically check you in and, analyze you from time to time. Dude, I just stay away. I don't even go to the VA. Right now I'm being penalized almost 70%, and I don't even care. At one time I was getting $3,200 a month for it, and now I think I only get about $600.
Oh shit.
I just don't like walking in the VA. I don't fucking care. And I think I came to the realization that if they just take all my money, it's fine. At no time did I ever join to get money. I didn't join for any of that shit. I made mistakes, man. I shouldn't have done it in the first place. I just need to get the fuck away from it.
Yeah. That's nuts.
Yeah, but no, John will tell you, man, I was a big boy. And then I lost weight quick, because I got my energy back, and I just started working out and biking, and it didn't take long.
Yeah, riding bikes is like fucking kryptonite to fat.
Oh, dude, it is.
Change your diet and start riding.
Oh yeah, your body fucking just starts, it's like, oh, this is here. We're just start digging into those fat cells.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm gonna get out of here. Allie just threw some food on my plate, and I'm like, "Yikes, that looks good." And,
yeah, I got a century ride to do tomorrow. So.
Oh, fun!
Oh, rad! Lucky.
Fuck yeah! Yeah. So I'm gonna go visit my dad at the VA because he had a stroke a couple weeks ago. I've been visiting him a few times a week. And, so dude, serious one. His whole right side of his body gone. Face like literally divided in half, like slumped, arm can't use it, fucking legs like can't walk. And he's been there for a few weeks now, and now he can finally walk like a 1-year-old child. He's proud of it. He's proud to be able to walk like a 1-year-old child. And you know, so I have to go there a couple times a week to let him know how big of a fucking dumbass he is, and hopefully he makes smarter choices.
Yeah.
So, but all right, guys, I'm out too. So it's been fun.
Yeah. Later.
for
See you later.
hanging.
Everybody in the comments. Yeah, for sure. See everybody.
Later.
Peace. Ooh, cut your head.
Cheers to the people who did wake up and activate and become peers in the great work. Nothing but admiration and thanks. And this forced shadow work has not been for you. It has been for those who did not respond to the fucking call of freedom. And you guys already know that. I don't even need to repeat that. But I will say with my Vienna lager here, cheers to the people who really did the great work. The ones who really activated, the ones who spoke out, the ones who put the message of freedom publicly out into the world through the creation, the creative expression that came from within themselves to publish and communicate it to those in need of that knowledge. You're my brothers and sisters, and you're my peers in the great work, and thank you.